Hello. Hey, Claire. How's it going? Happy Saturday. Jan, I hope you found me. Sorry I'm an hour late today, you guys, but I didn't do any prep for the stream yesterday, and I really wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in a row before I began. Yesterday I finished up a pattern that I'm submitting to the graphic artist, and I saw my new house and my signed escrow papers, and those were my priorities. So, you know how it goes. Life, right? So today I'm going to be drafting a sleeve. I know that there's probably going to be quite a few people that are interested in this kind of thing, and I've drafted hundreds and hundreds of sleeve patterns, but I've actually never, well, not never, I've only drafted one in this way a few times, and it's because typically I drafted them for, work in the garment industry, or maybe I'd alter a sleeve or create a sleeve with another sleeve as a starting point, which is a very, very, 90% of things, get done that way with pattern drafting. You have a starting pattern to kind of launch off from, and it makes it a lot easier because then you can kind of rule out the things you don't want. Hi, Eliza. But because this is my custom bodice and I'm using my measurements, I'm going to be going about this kind of the same way, but I'm going to be using those as my starting points. Hey, Patty. So I just want to say one thing right now. If you didn't see what I wrote on the Instagram post, is right now there's things happening in the world, and I know this isn't sewing related, but it just feels like I can't really be authentically myself without acknowledging some of these things, because it just feels like a completely disrespectful thing for me to just go about sewing and talking about sewing, even though I know that's what you're here for, in light of what's happening in the world, with police brutality towards people of color. And I know you're not here for that, but the thing is, that's a real world thing, and we're all human people. And just because it's not sewing related doesn't mean it's not happening. So I'm not your resource for what you can do for that. And I know you're not here for that, but I just want to acknowledge it because I'm not okay with it. And I just need to be true to myself and say those things. So I know a lot of people that are outside of the United States maybe have heard of these things, but it's something really, something I follow very closely. So without getting a little too emotional about this, because this is my fight too. And I just want to say this because basically what I've created here is a community for other sewists. I don't have anything to lose. I don't make money doing this. I do this because I want to help people with sewing and try and be a resource and a sounding board and somewhere you can experiment with things. But at the same time, I want everybody to feel safe here. And that's really, really important to me. And I want this to be a space where everyone feels welcome. And I would hate for someone to be here and go, well, life's just carrying on in that person's world like nothing's going on. But that's not how I feel. So anyway, so if you want resources for, doing work with becoming, not racist, or working on white fragility, or anything that you want to do in there, you can DM me and I can kind of point you in the right direction, but that's your own work, and I have my own work. So, but we're here to draft a sleeve today, and I'm ready to do that. And I hope you are too. So some of the prep I did, excuse me. I'm a little nervous when I talk about stuff like that because I'm not a very good speaker about those things, And I stay up on everything going on in the world, but I'm not ever good about talking about it. Like, it's all straight in my head, but when it comes out, it's kind of a crazy mess. So, everyone's life is so important. Yeah, exactly. All right, so I cut my bodice out and sewed it together again, and I tried it on my body, and I totally forgot to put the picture so you guys could see it. Maybe I could hold up my phone. Let's see. All right, so let's see if I can get a good one here. All right, so one of the things, I don't know if you can really see my phone. Oof. I'm gonna try and get it bright enough. I find that the dart is a little too, the side bust dart is a little too high when I'm wearing it. I also found the hip circumference, I added too much there. And also, remember this tightness that I had right here? Let me do the full screen here. So this tightness that I have this zoomed in right now, but maybe I'll just zoom it out. I wish it wasn't so bright, you know? Let's see if I can tone that down. That's a little better, huh? All right. So I also feel like it doesn't look like there's that tightness right here, but I still felt it right here. And I also noticed that in here, which way am I going? Camera's like way over here. Do you see this right here? I have this tiny bit of looseness right here. And it's a little more pronounced when it's on me. And so what I decided to do is to get rid of this and put it here. And so what I did was I sliced my pattern, I opened it up a 1/4 inch here, and I pivoted out this 1/4 inch there. Rather than monkeying around with the bust again, because I kind of felt like this right here, I wasn't too keen on this. And this right here comes like right here on me. You saw that maybe in the picture, I don't know. You probably are like, yeah, whatever. And this, while it looks like it's in the right spot on here, it needs to go about 1 inch lower. And then for the hip, I took it in back. I took this 1/2 inch out right here, this little like wing that I had going on there. And I think the only other thing I think I might do, I pinned it right here so that I wouldn't be pulling the whole garment even from over here. Because you can see, look at this. Look how loose that is. I still think this is a little too loose right here. It's not bad. It just feels loose. It's not evenly distributed. You know what I mean? So I think that this may be something I address when I work on the style garment that I make, like when I actually draft a pattern. I may even lower this dart a little bit. I think that's pretty high up. The other last thing I might do is get rid of a little bit of fullness just right here. This is fine. I don't like this. And remember, I put my dart at an angle. But it's okay. I think sometimes I get this little, if I do this, you can kind of see this little diagonal line I get right here. I'm kind of hoping that lowering the bust dart so that the fullness of the bust is actually in this area, because this is just too, it needs to be like right here so that the cup is right there. I think that'll help, but all in all, I think it's pretty good. I also may need to go out right here. It feels really good, but I do like a closer armhole because I feel like I have greater mobility of movement when my armhole is closer fitting. It's kind of a double-edged sword though, right? All right, all in all though, I am pretty happy with this. And I made that change here, which changed one measurement for drafting my sleeve, and so now I'm ready to go. So I'm ready. So like I said, this isn't a sleeve that I have to move my little mat under me. I have drafted very often, you know, because using my measurements. Okay, so here is the dart. So what I did is I cut a box around my dart. I just cut the whole dart out. And then I moved it 1 inch down, or 7/8 of an inch down. Taped it back, and then I figured out how to blend this in nicely. Took off the 1/2 inch here to nothing here, and then you can kind of see the little wedge that I created here. So I overlapped my neckline, blended it back in, and so I think, you know, talk about custom, right? So anyway, now we're ready. We kind of have the a pretty good starting point. And I'm going to use the tutorial on the Threads magazine website. And I linked it in the description if you guys want to try this yourself. And I'll show you what you need. So I printed out portions of their tutorial in this document, kind of like using screenshots, and so it's not all of the instructions because I pretty much know how to do it. I just wanted to know what their method was. And it's honestly almost just like drafting a flat pattern. So I was like, okay, I could have done this with what I had, but let's just, we'll use their tutorial, and I think that's a really great way to kind of send folks their way because I really like them. All right, so I have my piece of paper. I folded it in half. I even put my grain line on there. I hate it when I do that. That's kind of triggering for me when I get off the fold. So I have my piece of paper here for my sleeve. And so the cap will be up here. It's going to go down. This is going to be the underarm, and then the wrist will be right here. And so the measurements I took on me were my bicep circumference, my elbow circumference with my arm bent, my overarm measurement, so from the shoulder seam here down over the elbow to the wrist bone, the wrist circumference, and shoulder to elbow. So those were the measurements you start with on you. And then I took from my sloper, my basic bodice, the armhole depth. And I need to adjust that because now I have added a little bit right here. I added 1/4 of an inch there. And I added it to the front. So then now this is 1/8 of an inch more. So you figure out your armhole depth, which is basically, you're going to square from your center front to the underarm point on the seam line, not with the seam allowance. Hey Wendy, how's it going? And then you square down from your shoulder straight down. You just find this armhole depth. My line kind of went off there, off the page there, especially after I did the wedge. There we go. Now it's back on there. So then now we have, it's more like a 7 1/4, which is exactly what I wrote. So you're going to do that for your front and your back. You find out your armhole depth, add them together, divide it in half, and then that's why I have the 7 1/8. You also add ease to those measurements that you took of your body, because you don't want this sleeve to be your arm measurements. You want it to be a little bigger so you can move around and be comfortable, right? So they recommend adding, I think it's 2 to 3 inches for the bicep circumference. So I did 2 1/2 because, more isn't always better. And I just thought I'd err on that side because my biceps are kind of big. And then you add a little bit of ease to your elbow circumference, 1 to 2 inches. So I did 1 1/2. And 1 inch to the wrist. And that's, that's a, close fitting sleeve, but this is your block, right? So it's your launching off point for whatever patterns you're going to draft. All right, so now that brings me to start drafting my sleeve here using these measurements. And I think I'm just going to take this page off so I don't have to keep going back and forth like that. So like I said, I'm using the tutorial Threads magazine, basically because this at least gives you guys a place to go if you want these instructions besides me doing it. Otherwise, I'm using it out of like a book from my college years, or usually I just use another sleeve and I make the changes I need to make, but I don't have a starting sleeve. I don't want to use all of the blocks I have of mine. I kind of want a fresh slate, fresh start, for the sleeve block. All right, so let's see. The first thing we're going to do, I don't think they tell you this, but I'm just going to square across about where I think we're going to do about right here. I need this vertical line. It just helps me. I'm using a soft lead pencil, so I think you can see that really good, right? So just let me know if you want me to hold something up or anything. I can do that. So you always draft your sleeve on the half, like meaning you fold the paper in half. You don't cut the paper and just use a half of a sleeve. You do need a folded piece because while the sleeve is almost symmetrical, the front and the back is very subtly different from one another, and you kind of need that subtlety to make it fit really well. So, all right, so we're going to mark the points. Let's see, shoulder to the wrist. So let's see, and this is going to be my bicep line right here. So I'm going to square up my my armhole depth right here. And this will be my cap right here. And so now what I can do is, I need a bigger ruler. Oh, and I actually have a page. At the last second, I took a screenshot of their illustration here. Sorry, it's a little overexposed. So this is my piece of paper on the half. So this fold down here is this right here. So we're looking at it like this. So, yeah. So anyway. All right. So we got our shoulder point, our armhole depth, elbow line. Yeah. So we're just going to put in now all these measurements that we took right here. I have mine abbreviated the way I understand it, but you would have it just written down next to your instructions there. You guys okay? You guys are all quiet. I might need to put my air conditioning on. It like was over 100 degrees this week, and now it's like cloudy, but it feels muggy, you know. All right, arm length 24 inches, which is my cap to my wrist. Right there. It's probably the only time I'll need this larger ruler. Length to elbow is 14. So my cap to elbow. I'm going to square across. So in traditional sleeve pattern drafting, very traditional sleeve pattern drafting, there would be a little elbow dart on the back of the sleeve because naturally when you're standing there, your arm is usually slightly bent like this, just like mine is right here. And so what they do is they put a little dart to kind of help that, you know, shape. All right. You're watching closely, Eliza. No pressure. All right, so I have my bicep circumference, my arm length, 24 inches. I already did this one. Length to elbow. I need to put these check marks because I don't want to get lost here. So I would actually start doing these measurements on the half because remember the sleeve is folded on half. But I'm going to look at their instructions and make sure I don't do anything different if you're going to follow theirs as well. Yep. Armhole depth, square bicep line. Yep. Okay, yeah. All right, so we're going to, I already have a square line there. We're going to figure out our bicep circumference. Mine was 14.5 including the E, so 7.25. Go across here. So this is my bicep right here. So this is going to be that underarm point right here. So this is one of my basic blocks that I've had, and it has a lift in it, and I'll tell you about what a lift is later on. I'm really surprised a lot of people don't know about these in the pattern world, and I get asked by people who say they know what they're doing about it occasionally, and I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what a lift is? And I know like most people don't know about it, but most pattern drafters know about a lift, and what it does is it makes you be able to lift your arms up, and your whole shirt doesn't come with it. And so if you're not drafting your armhole really closely, sometimes that lift is kind of nice. It does add a little fabric right here, but it does add a comfort level to a woven garment. That's kind of nice. All right, so let's see. Our elbow circumference is 11.75. So on the half, that's 5.5 plus 3/8, so 5 7/8. Right there. And then we have our wrist circumference, which is 3 5/8. Like that's pretty close. Like I know off the top of my head that a cuff for like say a button down shirt like an Oxford is 8.5 to 9 inches, or most likely 9 inches. And if you were gonna say you were going to do just like a relaxed long sleeve t-shirt, it'd be like 9. So that's how close that is. All right, so now we have these points here. We're gonna draw a line from this underarm to the wrist. Just like that. You can see there's my elbow line. It's a little bit different. That's okay. Sometimes that happens. And then like that's not going to concern me at all anyway. All right, so I'm just looking at all these points. They have so much written on here. And really, I just don't really need all of that. So I'm going to do the quarter there. I could have made that a little bigger, right? Sheesh. All right, so this is a little tricky because I'm doing it in manila paper, and I would recommend you do this on softer paper than this. Hey, Terry, how's it going? So you're going to need to fold your paper here at this point. Oof. I'm going to do this like this on the half, so it's a little easier and more accurate. I'll highlight it here. This is that spot there I just did. Alright, so I basically folded my center of my sleeve to my underarm seam there. How are you doing, Terry? What are you up to these days? Okay, now we're going to do the sleeve cap, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch on each side of the line, center of the sleeve, an inch inward from the underarm seam and the bicep line. Okay. 1/4 to 1/2. Place marks 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. I think that's if you're looking for a flatter cap or a pointier cap. 3/4. Wait, 1/2 armhole depth. From the biceps line, measure up from the center line 1/2 the armhole depth plus 3/4. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to put an inch line here above my bicep, and I'm going to put one, they say 1/4 to 3/8, so I'm actually going to put mine at 1/4 right there, and this is from the center fold line. Now I'm going to measure bicep up to the cap, which is 7 1/8, so 3.5 plus, and then add 3/4. And we have this line right here. We're going to square across for that one. Just like that. Can you see that okay? It's kind of faint. I didn't do this line too dark there. Square a guideline. All right, yeah. So now we're going to take this fold line that we created and square through there. All right, looks like that's everything. All right, so I probably wouldn't do all these steps, but I think these are a really great way to kind of geometrically see your sleeve cap take shape. Oh, nice, Terry. Nice. I like that one. It's a good one. Are you going to do the shirt sleeve placket, or are you doing short sleeves? Probably short sleeves, huh? Okay, so now we're going to just, basically we're going to kind of connect these dots. Wait. This I did in the wrong spot. I was wondering why it was going up. Goes in like that. Let's confirm. Yep. Okay, so you're going to connect these dots here. So this is on the bicep line right here. Biceps give you a little bit, and then this is, as our family calls it, the bell bow. Your elbow. Am I sideways writing? And then this is the cap. Just to give reference. All right, and now we're going to connect these right here. So you can already start to see that it's kind of coming together here. Now we're going to kind of make the shape of the cap a little more rounded. We're going to add a little and take away a little on either side of these lines. Let's see. Mark halfway. Mark a halfway point on each of the sleeve cap guidelines. These are your sleeve cap guidelines right here. Measure in and out of the halfway points as shown. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, great. All right, so we're gonna mark halfway between these points. So that is, for me, 2 3/8. Don't take my measurements for yours. You need to measure yourself. And then this one will be 2 1/4 plus, about right there. And this line's gonna go this way. It's gonna scoop towards the sleeve. So we're gonna I'm gonna put a line about 1/4 of an inch parallel to there, but you can go a little more than that if you want. And I'm gonna do the other way on this one here. I'm gonna do 3/8 on this one. I can already tell that's what I'll want. Let me find my French curve. Oh shoot. I almost lost my whole tool caddy. Whew. All right, so this is my French curve. It's a very beloved object of mine. I've had it since college. It used to have stickers on it in that little swirly shape. That's what that is. It's broken, so it's taped together. But I love it. It's perfectly clear, which I think is really awesome. The tip's broken off here. It's a precious object. These 3 items are still from my college days. All right. You can probably use a hip curve if you only have one of those. But you'll find that the French curve is pretty essential for drafting sleeves and armholes. This is a hip curve. This is from college days as well. There's still paint on it from my color theory class. I hardly ever use my hip curve. I use it when I'm drafting pant side seams or skirt side seams. Maybe some waist curves. But most likely, if you're only going to buy one ruler, because I know rulers can kind of be pricey sometimes, I'd get the French curve. So I get way more use out of it. A lot of times I just eyeball it, but it is pretty useful. If you're looking for pattern drafting supplies, just ask and I'll tell you what you really need, because you don't really need all of them. You can get by with things. You can even get by without a tracing wheel. It's just like, this thing is pretty great when you have it. So, okay. So now we're going to kind of blend these things. Hi, Jan. You found me now? Draw a double line on the back sleeve. A single. Okay, yeah, I'm not worried about that. Looks like we're going to be opening up here and here, they've already opened up their sleeve. You probably can't even see this. Sorry. If you go to their website, you can. When did they open up the sleeve? I'm not going to open mine up till the very end. All right, so we're pretty much almost done. All right, so we're gonna start truing this up. I'm just looking for that sweet spot. Nothing set in stone yet. There we go. This kind of stuff sometimes drives people crazy, trying to find the best spot on their ruler. Yeah, don't sweat it. Just do your best. Remember, they said, oh, you could go up to 3/8 or down to 1/4. So now we have our sleeve cap here. I'm going to erase my old lines because I did pencil for once, not Sharpie. And this is going to be my back of my sleeve, and the other one's going to be my front sleeve. This has no seam allowance on it yet either. And when I mark my sleeve, I mark up 2 lines, 3 and 3.5 inches. I always do this. In fact, sometimes like certain pattern drafters have signatures like that, and that's a very standard one. But I could tell at a couple places I worked if I had drafted the sleeve because it was 3.5, and on this side it would be 3 inches, and it kind of helped because then I'd be like, okay, I know what ease that has because I drafted it, And then the same notches will go on the bodice as well. And then we'll know our front from our back. So right now I could cut this out, but I want seam allowance, and I still need to work on the fit of this. This is by far not done. So I'm going to transfer my marking of my cap to the other side so we can open up our sleeve. Normally what I would be doing is I would cut out the sleeve, fold it in half, and then I would true it up. I would cut out the whole bottom half of the sleeve while it's folded in half, and then I would true up the cap. I'd probably cut up to about here where the notches are, and then I'd open it up and finish drafting the cap. Usually your cap doesn't change here or here. It's just right about here. It's actually right about here that you're going to change the front. And then it like scoops it away a little bit to make it a little bit more ergonomic. All right. This cap looks a little narrow to me. But it looks really nice. I'm going to carry our lines over. These can be really helpful for when you're like drafting a short sleeve and you kind of, you know, you're going fast, you want to know where to go. You're like, okay, there's my elbow. I know that. That's my elbow when it's bent, right? You did miss that probably, Eliza. So I drew some guidelines. So this was an inch away right here from the underarm point. Yeah. Oh, right. Claire, I have heard of that. Yeah, that's so odd to me. For 30 years, 35 years, patterns are always the other way. But thank you for that. I'll try and remember that. Yeah, so Eliza, I drew a guideline from 1 inch from the bicep here. And then this is the sleeve. This guideline right here is the sleeve folded in half from the underarm to the center. So I have this point here. And these were, this one right here, I have a little mark right here. That's 3/8 of an inch away from the center line. And then I drew a line from here to here and here to here. And then I figured out the curve. So I went this way. So the line was right here. I went that way from the line about 1/4 of an inch, and that way above the line about 3/8 of an inch, and that's how I found my curve. And then I used my ruler to kind of smooth it out. So I'm going to scoop my front out. This is always about 1/4 of an inch, just like that, because like I said, your arm naturally goes forward and the back is a little bit bigger. All right, I'm going to put our 3-inch right here, because this is the front. I'm not French. And I'm going to get rid of this right here so I don't mistake it. And now I'm going to start measuring my sleeve cap in relation to my bodice, because I have a feeling that there's no ease yet either. I also have a feeling that the shoulder point on the sleeve is going to be in a spot that's going to make me very uncomfortable, because usually your armholes, these two right here, in very traditional pattern drafting, they're about 3/4 of an inch different, and I have a feeling mine's going to be much different. That oh yeah, Eliza got it. Yeah, so you saw then. All right, so I'm going to measure my armhole, and this is something I think it's really good when you're doing a lot of sleeves to figure out what makes sense to you, because most of my patterns I draft with seam allowance on them, and you know that is up to you as well. I like to, I'm just fixing this pattern, I accidentally cut into it. So follow along here. So the way I look at the armhole is without seam allowance at the shoulder. I look at it as one continuous armhole, right? That's the way I look at it. So I usually don't include this in my measurement but I do include the seam allowance at the side seam because as you're measuring along the cap, this little side seam right here, this underarm has that same seam allowance. My sleeve doesn't have any seam allowance right now, and my block does. So it's better to think of it as a pure pattern with 0 seam allowance. So I'll just measure on the seam line, but I'm going to write the measurement on my armhole with the seam allowance here and not here, just so you guys know that I know I'm doing that, and it probably seems a little confusing, but it's like I say, it's the way I like to think of the armhole, because you don't think of the shoulder seam as part of the sleeve measurement. So all right, so I'm going to measure it on the 1/2 inch seam allowance line, and I never trust whatever hatch mark I've made for the seam allowance here. I just go away from this edge that seam allowance amount. So that's about, it's about that right there. So that's perfect. So 11 3/8 minus, which means 10 7/8. And the minus for me is my own little quirky thing. I don't write 16ths. I just say minus or plus. So I know all my 8ths, and I know, I know my 16ths sometimes. I actually knew them all when I did CAD, because you needed to move your points in increments of a decimal. So I did know those, but I'm not up on that anymore. All right, so we're gonna measure our, so the other thing you can do is you can measure your entire armhole and then just take 1 inch off if your seam allowance is at 1/2 inch at each one. So this one also is 9 7/8 plus. Okay, so I know when it's in the parentheses, that's the pure amount, and pure meaning no seam allowance. There you go. All right, so actually my sleeve is 1 inch different from front to back. I feel a lot better about that. I actually thought it was going to be like 2 inches different, and I think I was just visually looking at it. I was like, that front armhole looks a lot smaller than the back. And that can happen, that's fine, but you know, I just wasn't a big fan of it. All right, so then I usually write my measurement right up here. That one's minus, and this is 9 7/8 plus. That way I just know, and I can move these aside. You can measure and measure and measure and get a slightly different measurement every time. As we used to say, you know, keep measuring until you get the one you want when we were really frustrated. So it's an inside joke. All right, so let's measure on my seam line, because remember this doesn't have seam allowance. That's my new little scooped out front there. We're just going to measure till we get there. 9 7/8 plus, which is right here. Usually your shoulder line is going to come in front of the center line of the sleeve. Anytime I see an indie pattern and the shoulder line is behind it, and it's not indie pattern, just any pattern, that's a warning bell for me. I've definitely drafted a few sleeves like that, and it did not turn out well. And you know, I'd figured out I'd done some big mistake later on and gone, okay, great, I have to start this over again. So we're going to do 10 7/8 minus, just about right here. And I'm going to double check that and measure it from the other direction as well. I love these see-through rulers for this exact reason. You see how I'm using it right now. I can bend it right along that amount there. 10 7/8 minus. It is why you will see that I have a separate ruler for something with from drawing my grain lines, like this line right here with ink, so that I can keep the pen that gets on the ruler on this, because when I use this to measure, this is what happens. You see that dirt that just appeared? Super annoying. Right, Jan? Exactly. Like, do I weigh myself with clothes or without clothes today, or after the coffee I've drank, or before? Okay, so I want to get rid of one of these little lines here. So here we go. This is actually pretty interesting. So here's my front, here's my back right there. And so right now my sleeve only has a 1/2 inch of ease, which is not enough for me. I like a full 1.5 inches. I use the full amount for my sleeves. That's just what my bicep needs because of this gush right here I like to talk about. So adding that ease in there, you could do it a few different ways. I could slash and spread my sleeve. I could just add it to the underarm. Just depends on what you're gonna do with it. This actually, I'm kind of okay with this right here as far as like where my shoulder point's gonna be. It's gonna be right here, and that's it's like 3/8 of an inch in front of this line. I'm used to it being about 1/4 of an inch. So this right here is gonna be my shoulder. So this little notch is gonna match the shoulder seam of my bodice. And then any ease I add needs to be symmetrically added to the sleeve. So 1/2 the ease goes to the front and 1/2 goes to the back. You don't add it all to one spot. You don't slice straight down the middle and open up your sleeve. You're gonna try and do it like maybe on this fold line here. But really you need this ease here. This is where you want it. You do not want it under here. That's easy to deal with because that's all on the bias. And that's on your under your arm. You don't want fullness under here. You want it all right here. So another way you can do it, and this is the agonizing way to do it, is, you know, start adding to your cap to kind of get it in there. This would be the traditional way I would have done it before I got lazy. You guys know me, I'm really lazy. No, I'm not. Let me look at my sleeve right side up so we can all look at it right side up. So this part right here, like when you're easing a sleeve into a garment, when you're sewing it, and I know that that's a kind of a triggering thing to sew for a lot of folks. They really don't like having to add that or ease that amount in, and it really drives them crazy. But it's really important for your garment to feel really good, and I always stress that the shoulder area should fit really good on you, and that's part of it. If you're doing a set-in sleeve and woven, you really need the ease through here. And like I said early on, my cap looks a little narrow to me. So I could do that. I could sit here and go, all right, I'm going to add a little bit of ease here by just fattening my cap symmetrically. I have to do it symmetrical, right? Now, if I measure that, that probably only added maybe 1/4 inch. I just know from experience that that doesn't really add a whole lot. I think I'll add that anyway, but I'm probably going to add my ease here, or just, I'm just going to probably slash and spread it so that's all right here. Otherwise, if I add it here, I have to trace this and move it over. So might as well just add it maybe like right here. You know what I mean, jelly beans? So I'm going to cut my sleeve. I'm going to fold it in half first. And we're going to add the ease in there. I'm going to cut a little excess off my paper so I can staple it. We'll use that to tape in there. And I do, sorry, the camera's going to shake. I do like to staple my patterns when I'm doing stuff like this because it's more accurate. You'll see me not do this occasionally, and it's not as accurate to do that. All right, so we're going to slash all the way down there. Now, if I was like, I really don't want to add this to the elbow area, there's a way to just add it right here, and it's basically like a full bicep adjustment, you know. But I really want to add length to this seam right here. If this gets too big down here, I can deal with that so easily. It's just this area right here that I really want this fullness. So I'm gonna slash straight down there. that. I'm going to go straight up to it, right at that hemline. Now I can take my staples out. And we're going to open it up. If it comes apart, like if this rips down here, don't worry about it. Just tape it back. We're doing our paper dolls. All right. So now let's use this paper here. And we'll add in our fullness. So what I like to do is I'm going to tape it to these pieces of paper. I'm going to tape it to the center piece first. So we'll just secure it, and then that way we can add the fullness very symmetrically. I mean, honestly, I might even be able to use one piece of paper. It might be a little bit of a struggle to do that. Plus the paper is kind of funky. I'm not shy about tape with pattern drafting. I am about a frustration-free experience. I wish I would have flipped that piece of paper over, though. All right, what is that right there? Oh, that is that piece of paper over there. All right, let's get rid of some of that. Not necessary, but we might as well. All right, we're going to tape this one here now. So, oh my gosh, you guys, I got to see my house yesterday, and there's a pond, a man-made pond. Like a little, like, with a fountain and, you know, really nice little pond with a couple fish in it. But there were frogs this big in there. So cool. My daughter was like, is that a statue? And the guy was like, no, those are real. Sure enough, it was gone when we walked by again. So excited. Big frogs. All right, so now we have our, extra paper tape to this right here. There we go. And let's see, I had what? I had a 1/2 inch, right? So I'm going to add another 1/2 inch to each side. I know, right? So cool. He said they get foxes, coyotes come down in the nighttime, and then there's rattlesnakes there, but they've only seen one. Oh, really, Jan? It was huge. It was like this big, just sitting there on a rock next to the little pond. Like we were leaning. There's like a little bridge. There's 2 creeks on either side of the house that run all year round, tiny creeks. And then there's one that kind of swells up from the ground right next to the house by this little pond, and that is more like a full moon type of thing. So yeah, my daughter said, "Did you hear that? That's the frog," and she said it sounds like a cow. And I was like, I did think that was a cow. So it's kind of cool. All right, so I'm gonna add a 1/2 inch now. I probably should have said I didn't cut a perfectly straight line for that because it doesn't really matter. What matters is this amount I'm going to pivot it on the seam line. So I just need to make sure I get 1/2 inch right there, right? Here's my cut and here's my 1/2 inch. It doesn't matter that that's not straight. If you want to draw a line and make it straight, you can totally do that. It doesn't matter though. You just need to get this nice amount right there on the seam line, just like that. All right, and so I want to make sure these things stay nice and flat, so I'm going to probably weight that down while I tape it. So yeah, he said he had guinea hens there for a really long time. And he really liked them. He had them for like 13 years. What, frogs? Really? Yeah, he said he was a little worried that they would eat the fish in there someday because they're getting so big. The fish were like this big. But, you know, they're not koi. He said those get too big. Okay. I'm also going to flip this over, trim the paper up a little bit, and tape it down. All right, so I'm going to add a 1/2 inch on this side. So now I'm adding that fullness in the exact same spot on both sides. So theoretically, my sleeve is still symmetrical because we're not a computer. We're doing this, you know, on the flat pattern. So, wow. I just hope they're never on the path and I accidentally step on one. That for me would be like, you know, one time my husband got up in the middle of the night. He does that. He gets up in the middle of the night, walks a little bit, you know. And this was at our very first home. It's a lot of homes ago. And we lived in Humboldt County in Northern California where there's a lot of moisture, 100% humidity most of the time. And, oh, I know they'll eat like mice and stuff, won't they? I've seen that before. And I was asleep and I heard this. He made a weird noise. And I was like, Michael, what's wrong? He was like, I just stepped on a slug. It was like 3 in the morning. He stepped on a slug and it got between his toes and it popped. And he was just understandably extremely grossed out. I thought it was really funny. But I didn't step on it, so. But that is something I grew up worrying about, is stepping on snails. You know, like when I would walk to the mailbox or whatever in my apartment complex or whatever. I'm just cutting off this little bit of extra paper back here flapping around. Yeah, this is peaceful being, right? The frogs. They're carnivores. I'm just hacking this to bits here. Forgive me, I'm just trying to hurry it. Alright, so now we're going to tape this down. All the tape. I tape the heck out of stuff, you know? Because see, I see that, I thought that was buckling right there. I don't want any buckling. It'll make things inaccurate. It'll also drive you nuts. And fixing it later on will be a big pain in the butt. Just take the time. If you're taking the time to draft a pattern, just take the time. I'm obviously making like, if this isn't like the videos you see where it's like perfectly edited, perfectly clean, nothing went wrong, nothing needed to be adjusted. This is really what it looks like in the design room. Unless you're using CAD, which I've done. You know, I've used CAD before, but I don't own CAD anymore. So, and by CAD, I mean like a computer-aided drafting system. CAD does not draft your patterns for you. At all. You still have to draft your patterns. I got that kind of half on and half off right there. There we go. All right, so now we have, it does feel a little wonky. I can't tell, this piece of paper was like this, and this piece of paper was like that, so my bad. Oh, God. Oh, my gosh, that's terrible. I do like that sound, too. I think, Eliza, if you have a basic block, You know, we started our basic block process last fall. We didn't really get it. It didn't seem like anyone really got it to a point where they wanted to start, you know, getting that fit right. But I think if you could, you can use that as a starting point. I would. And, you know, just drafting your basic bodice with flat measurements. Just remember that that bodice is tight. So if you want, you know, if you want it to go a little easier, when you go to try it on you, only sew it at the shoulder seams. Put it on you, add a little bit. It's a process. You have to keep like adding to it, cutting it out, sewing it again, adding to it, cutting it out, sewing it again. I've made three bodices or four on just this week on this, and that's just how it is. Yeah, Eliza, I would do that. If you wanted to make your sleeve, absolutely you don't need to have the Beatrice. I don't have an arm on my Beatrice. I'm purely doing this from measurements. So you just need to know an armhole measurement. So if you have a garment that you like the armhole on, like it fits you really nicely, I would use that. And you just need the armhole depth, and then you need to be able to fit your cap to an armhole that you think you're going to use your sleeve to. But yeah, you don't need the Beatrice at all. Not for the sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to start... I'm just going to cut this off here. I'm going to start cutting some of my paper off so I can get a symmetrical sleeve. So now I'm going to cut my underarm off up. Let's get rid of some of this paper here. So it'll fold nice and flat. Anything like that, like add salt to things, but I also heard about people using a magnifying glass to burn ants. I never did that as a kid either. So my sleeve does not have any seam allowance on it right now, and I normally actually wouldn't start cutting it out until I had the seam allowance, but I'm going to make a clean block without all this taping. Same with that. I'm going to clean it up. I might leave this, but I probably will clean it up and just keep that as reference because I like seeing my progression. It kind of reminds me of something I may have chosen that I may forget that I chose the why, you know. All right, so now I'm going to cut all, just like right here, just a tiny little bit. Like that. I'll just cut that off. And, actually, I'm going to cut it out on the back. That's what I should do. Yeah, see, I shouldn't even have cut that off yet. Oh, well. It'll be okay. So I'm going to cut my cap out. Smooth that line. This is that wedge I created right here. I'm going to smooth this out. I'm going to cut out the cap on the back side only, and then I'm going to scoop out that little front piece again. All right, I'm going to unstaple it. And get rid of some of these. So there's my sleeve. I'm trying to decide. This one was a little bit further in than I didn't get that line maybe in the right spot, maybe when we slashed and spread. So I'm trying to decide if I go with it. It's probably okay. I'm gonna tape it in there and just make my decision based on good information rather than lazy information. so now we have that. And so this is my double notches, so let's just double check those. 3. Let me get rid of some of this stuff here. Not this one. This one's getting pretty dingy. It's like I can see that corners get kind of dull. You know? It's always so much harder to measure on the seam line when there's no seam allowance. I can really see when I'm not being accurate. All right, that's perfect. All right, so I'm gonna put my notches for my back. Like that. And I'm gonna mark that. And now we're going to scoop this out like I said before. Like I said, when you do things like this, like scooping it out right there, adding, just like patting that, it really doesn't add much or take away much from the measurement on the line. So when you're doing it, don't think you're going to kind of screw up your whole sleeve for the measurement that you're trying to go for. If you're doing something super precise for a client, or you need it to be in, you're doing it in CAD and it's very obvious when that line doesn't measure up, that's, something you can adjust. But for you, it's going to be fine. Like you can decide later, I don't want this much ease, and you can pivot some of that out, right? But just doing these little things where, like you saw earlier, I was like, I'm going to pad this. Look at that. I didn't need to, because when I brought this out, it made this bigger right here. So there's the gush of my arm. I have room for that now. But when you take away or add that, it doesn't add to this length here, but barely. This is kind of, I can't tell if it feels like it's flat. I can't tell if I got it taped on there, kind of funky. All right, I'm gonna scoop this out right here. Oh man, I hate it when that happens. That kind of went clunky right there. Now we're gonna draw our 3-inch mark. It's right on this line right here. This is the front. This is the back. And now we have this shoulder line right here. I'm being bold by notching everything, but now we're gonna double check it. All right, let's move this out of the way here. It's a sharper pencil. So one of the ways a lot of people will check things to sew together is they walk it. That's what they call walking it. And this is literally what you do. And I like to use my awl. I don't have seam allowance on the sleeve, so it makes it a little hard, but it'll at least be really obvious. My sewing machine was on. All right, so I use an awl. You can use a pin, like a sewing pin, or maybe a tapestry needle if you don't have an awl. But let me trim this little piece of, this is some of that taped paper. There we go. And if you want to make sure you're like, I have monkeyed around with this, like, right? This is the front of the sleeve, and I know that. So I'm going to draw my seam line on here. So it's very obvious to all of us. Okay. Just drawing a parallel 1/2-inch line. It's really easy to get confused when you're trying to follow a line and you have all these other lines that you've added, It's good to just be really clear with yourself where you're actually measuring. All right, let's draw our seam allowance on the shoulder as well. And because my sleeve doesn't have seam allowance, I'll do it on the underarm as well. Kind of hard to see right here. Let's make sure that's Very obvious. All right. All right, so now we're going to walk our sleeve on the seam line. And remember, it'll be bigger. Oh boy. It's really obvious how inaccurate this can be when you don't have that extra seam allowance to buff it. Let's put our notch. So what I like when you have the seam allowance on the sleeve, when you're walking it, you can actually put your awl on the seam line rather than right now I'm kind of just inside of it. You do this a lot in pattern drafting. Walk your sleeve like you're sewing it. Oof. If that happens, you should start over usually. Okay, so now we're going to mark the shoulder on the sleeve. That's looking pretty good. Okay. You want your ease to be the same front and back. You don't want more on the back than you do on the front, unless maybe your body dictates that, but it's going to be very uncommon to see that. I've never done this with my left hand, so wish me luck here. I'm going to mark my notches. It gets very curvy, you just have to do a little bit at a time. Keep that line lined up. All right, so then there's my shoulder seam right there. Look at that. So we have 3/4 of an inch on either side of my shoulder notch. That is perfect. Like, the fact that it's split in the middle is great, and you know where I would measure it is on the cut edge there. So it's 5/8 plus and 3/4. Wait, yeah, and 5/8 plus. There we go. So that's perfect. So I have about almost like 1 3/8 inch ease in my sleeve cap. Beautiful. The shirt I'm wearing today is the Scout, the grain line Scout. And if you look back at that video, I actually did this kind of the same thing as the sleeve. I made sure it had 1.5 inches of ease, and this sleeve fits so well. You know, it's really great. It's a very close armhole. I think the only thing I find is that I probably could use a tiny bit more in my bust circumference, because sometimes my shirt does this. You know, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. So, and other than that, I mean, look at the sleeve fits so well. And it's just because I added a full 1.5 inches of ease. I tend to need that. All right, so what next? All right, so now I have my basic block. So the next step would be to cut this out, sew it up, attach it to my block, and then try it on and see how it fits, right? I feel pretty good about this though, because I know it fits this armhole and I know it has the ease that I like. My only question in my mind right now is how much ease I want right here while I'm wearing it. And I'm also going to make sure that this line here is in the right spot. I think it is, you know, but sometimes you just never know. You may want it a little further away from where your arm's moving around, or you want it lower down. So it just depends. So my next step would be that, and then also maybe drafting a pattern. Can I leave this on here? I don't know. So you guys have any questions about that? Look at this. Looks like a architectural fiasco, huh? Let me get some clean paper and we'll clean this up. Put everything back. Need those. Don't need that. Don't need that. Or that. Or that. Move all this. Have you, any of you done anything like this where you've drafted your block or a sleeve? Or do you have fit issues with your sleeves? I always do. So I know for me that this was really important to have this be correct, you know. Let me get some paper. I'm going to put my back on the fold, but not my front. Actually, what am I going to do? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Yeah. I know it's a little bit daunting. It's easy for me, right? Like I have all this stuff, I'm set up, but I just say like chip away at it. Yeah. Yeah, I find certain pattern companies, I just add it straight off the bat now. It's not, doesn't mean their pattern's wrong. It just fits me better if I add it, you know? Okay, so I don't quite have enough to do all three of these if I do the back on the fold, but I don't need the back on the fold. Pretty excited about this. I still am thinking about adding a little bit more here. That might actually put my dart more parallel to my center front if I take out this little bit of extra. Kind of interesting, you know? All right, so where's my pencil? So that's... This thing is so thick right here. I've monkeyed around with that so much, you know? Center front. This one. I think there's tape right here in the way. And then I need my notch for my sleeve right there. All right. So what if I did add a 1/2 inch more to this right here? If I did that. And it was more like this, this. What would that mean? I want to look at this. So it'd be like 1 1/16. That's 1 1/4, so it'd be this line here and this line here. Let's see. I put a hook on my ruler so I could hang it up so it wasn't always on my table. I always found that I'm a little klutzy with my rotary knives, and I will bump into this ruler even if it's just sitting on my table. So I put a pattern hook on it so I can just hang it up. And because you're just cutting fabric along, your ruler's just sitting over there, and it just barely touches it and it ruins the blade. Story of my life, man. All right, so this is still not parallel. It'd have to be pretty far over, but that probably does shift it a little bit more. Shifts it like 1/8, not much. All right, so let's see. That's my apex. So typically what I do for my seam allowances, so I know, is I go like this. I just do a little cross hatch. 1/2 inch. And over here, the 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. Sorry, I don't do metric, you guys, off the top of my head. But see, I just do something like that. I kind of wish this is what pattern companies did, but I know when they have to show all the sizes. When you're showing all the sizes, it's really hard to be able to do that. This is the center front. And then, what did I add? I added 1.5 inch hem. So same thing here. It'd be more like up here. So 1/2 inch, 1.5 inch. That looked bigger all of a sudden, didn't it? Okay, so got my screw punch for my drills here, and it's kind of gigantic right now. I got it on kind of a gigantic tip on it. Yeah, that one. I'm going to add 1 inch to this. I don't really need to, but it's kind of it's just the old throwback to how I used to always do things. You don't have to do it that way. It just makes sense to me, and I always expect it there. You know what I mean? Habits. You would never use a straight up inch just sticking out your center front there like that. All right, so let's cut it out. When you're cutting paper patterns, I'm using pattern scissors here, and they have the short blade. They look like huge scissors, but really it's just this blade's really short to make it really easy to maneuver, especially curves. But you don't want to move your scissors very much. You want to move the thing you're cutting. You bring the paper to it. And so you'll see I'll fold my paper away to give myself some space like this. But it does those curves really beautifully. You don't want this this right here hanging towards me, because then I bump it away. My body will bump it away. That's why I fold it up. Let's see if there's actually a right angle here, because it don't look like it at all. There we go. It's probably because I trimmed off that 1/2 inch there, and I didn't true that hem up. Sometimes you can just see it, you know. I didn't true up that dart again, but it's pretty flush with the bottom, so it'll be fine. All right, we just need our neckline and our notches, and then we'll have our front, our almost final draft. I say we, but you know, you're here in spirit, right? I know it's my draft. I'm only notching the center front so that I notice it. All right. What did I add? Hey Megan, how's it going? What ease did I add to this? I can't remember. I was going to put my ease on there. Come a long way, baby. So if I'll just do it the way I normally would. I actually would fold this and put it on there. This is the basic bodice I've been doing all week. And then today we drafted a sleeve. So now I'm just kind of cleaning up my pattern while I decide what I'm going to do. Because I'm kind of like, okay, I probably would like to, I'll probably will just cut this out of fabric. And if I can probably set the camera up and we can go over there and sew it. It's either that or if you guys want, I'm going to sew a project bag today. You can join me for that instead. I want my elbow line here. And see, when you trace it out on the fold like this, it enables you to still be able to cut it out as long as you've got the back facing up, because it's only the front that has that little tiny bit that's scooped out right there. But I still like to staple this to make it accurate. I've had teachers say, you didn't staple enough, you know, so I still think about that. When you cut folded things out, always angle your scissors. I kind of do a hard angle like this to get that under layer to be cut exactly the same as the top layer. I forgot to add seam allowance. Ay, caramba. Well, that's a bummer. Whoops. You don't have the willpower. Willpower? What does willpower have to do with it? I have my my gingham my Asodus dress. It looks a lot like the hinterland. And I actually think of the hinterland every time I see it because it's a gingham hinterland that I have bookmarked in Instagram. I had been wanting a gingham dress, and then that popped up in my feed like a couple years ago. And I was like, yes, see? I am not the only one that wants a gingham dress. And then, but I just never tried the hinterland. I wasn't sure about that pattern. So what's going on, Megan? Are you more interested in the quilting lately? Maybe that's it. Maybe you just aren't feeling the garment mojo. So if you're doing a short sleeve, make sure that you go out a little bit for your short sleeve. Don't just cut it off right here, unless you really want a close fitting one. I need to add my seam allowance. All right, 1/2 inch seam allowance. My pencil's getting kind of fat. That's why I like the hard leads. They stay sharp for so long. So great. That's kind of how I feel about my new house. I don't have the willpower to paint it, and I feel like it needs painting. You know what I mean? This line isn't very straight, so I'm going to straighten it out. I know I'll be happier if I paint it, you know? The bedrooms and stuff. Oh, shoot. You're still doing your patio stuff. I'm going to add an inch hem. I will never use this sleeve like this, so it doesn't really need. In fact, I'm going to do a 0 seam allowance there. I typically just find that to be enough. I won't use this sleeve as is. It'll probably this circumference here and stuff. All right, now I can cut my sleeve out. Make sure when you're doing curves like this, you have a nice right angle right here. I know it's just for like a split second that there's a right angle there at that top of that curve. But you definitely don't want it to be angled like this or like this. You don't want a peak or a valley at the top there. Nancy! I have one cut out, Nancy. I cut one out finally recently. I've had the fabric for forever. I cut out the Maya Sodas dress without the ruffles. So just a basic, like, I don't know what I want to call it. A basic dress. And then the Maya Sodas has an angled front right here with a collar stand. I tried it on my dress form and it actually looked pretty darn good. I pinned it on there. I'm not going to sew it on camera because the gingham is going to make you guys vomit. It'll just do something funky to the cameras. Right angle here at the fold. It's a little bit off now, probably because of that angling or the slash and spread I did. And then I'm going to fix it again. When I open it up, I'll be able to see if it's actually square. Oof. Cousin husband, that sounded something like sister wife for a second there. Alright, let me put my notches in here. Yeah, I can't wait to see it too. Aw. Oh, nice, Nancy. Just getting some older projects done. That's pretty cool. I kind of liked doing that day. Just kind of getting all those things. And now I have a few new ones over there. Alright, so I have my shoulder notch here. This looks, look at that, how much bigger this is. That is probably me getting it a little bit inaccurately traced. Let's see. Sometimes paper adds a lot, like the double thicknesses here. Could probably trim a little off. Elbow line, or bell bow as my family calls them. I'm pretty pleased with how this turned out today. Let's check that straight line at the bottom. Make sure it actually is straight. Oh, that's actually surprising. It is. I didn't think it would be. All right. Green line ruler, and we'll draw. I push it against the fold. Well, I'll make the Minnesota dress. I'm just not going to make the gingham one. I have this. I'm going to make mine out of this. It's like a watercolor print. Boy, my cameras are so unkind. But yeah. And here's so I'm doing the gingham one like this. And then that gauze one and that. But yo, that gauze the other day was kind of a pain in the booty, man. Why do I keep dropping things today? Yeah, I'm kind of excited about that, Nancy. I like that dress silhouette. It doesn't seem like one I would normally like with the ruffles and everything, but every time I see it on someone, I really like it. Oh, you found I've never seen it with the black. What are you going to make in your hedgehog dress, Megan? Which dress pattern? I think because of the like I remember I had that little snafu with my front placket, not realizing that it extends from the center front. Between that and making it lined, the dress is a little big on me, not in a bad way, but it definitely the lining makes it really slippery, you know, whereas if it were just the gauze, it would cling and it wouldn't feel so like much ease, you know. I love that dress though. It turned out good. I always want to wear it now. I want to make more of that dress. It seems like a good staple, you know. Comfortable, it fits, everything stays where it's at, pockets, the whole thing. Why am I getting that out? This one's a little sharper now. So I think next I'm going to cut this out. Oh, I don't know why I just did that. And then sew it together. And then I'm going to sew a project bag together. And you guys are welcome to stick around or not. I'm going to make it for Miriam. Okay, so let's see here. I have my waistline marked there. And that's my neck yoke. Oh, this is what I knew I needed to do something. I was like, I'm missing something. There we go. Maybe the hinge on. That'll be cute. That would be really cute. I'm just walking my seam, side seam here because I added a little bit to that front hem to make it square. There we go. I always do the hash mark for the drill hole. I call those drill holes, and I apologize that I do that because I know a lot of folks get really confused by that, and I am sorry I say that. It's just a, yeah. It doesn't have to be called a drill hole. It's just a marking. Hey, Ray. What was really funny? Probably about the frog. Huge frogs at my new house. Huge! This new house is going to be a lot of work. This is my last stream ever. Just teasing. But it feels like that. Okay. Going to add my seam allowances on here. This is something I used to do on freelance pattern work. I would draw in the seam allowances like this, and it was just like something I thought of in like a weird moment, and it had a really good impact for a lot of my clients because some of them weren't industry trained. And just telling them, oh, the neckline has a 1/4 inch seam or whatever. Just visually, this really helped. And it also helped whoever was sewing it because I may not have had to had any contact with whoever would be sewing their. I would do their prototypes, but then after that, it would go to someone else. And so having that visual where you can see this edge has 1/4 inch, that edge has 1/2 inch. Seeing that juncture, that is the juncture. It makes a big difference. Oh, I could make houses for them, huh? Will they use them? There were a few birdhouses. He had this, he has a few agave, the couple we're buying the house from. There are a few agave on the property, huge agave. And one of them still has the flower stalk in it that it bloomed like 3 years ago. And so it's got this huge stalk. It's probably, I don't know, 20 feet, 25 feet high. And he left it because there's 3 birds' nests in it. And there's like a woodpecker, like round hole in the center where the little nest is. So he says he leaves it for that. And it's pretty stunning. Oh, that's cool. Cricket would love that. She used to make fairy houses. She is a pro. All right, so sometimes when I have, this is my center back line right here, right? I don't actually, like if I had enough paper, I mean, I clearly could have cut another piece of paper, but I would just cut the back on the fold, leave the front as a cut too, even though this isn't a pattern I'm going to cut and sew for me. I'm going to turn this into other things. But sometimes what I do is I go like this. I put a wavy line right here. Something that's very, very obviously not on the fold and not a button extension. You know what I mean? Because I've definitely added, like just cut it off and thought that that was the line that I cut on. And then I'm like, why is the back 2 inches too big? You know? So I think I'll pop in here from time to time. I'll just surprise you guys with some streams and stuff. Because I was like, I'm going to take the month of June off. And my husband was like, really? Like, he didn't say it that way, but just seeing him, he was kind of like, you're probably going to want to go to work. So, I think he's right. I got all my life, right, to unpack and stuff and get set up. What was I just thinking about doing? Oh, here we go. Doing my drills here. I always rest things like this. Do you ever find yourself, it's like when you're threading the needle and you're like, I do that with things like this when I'm trying to aim something with my awl. I set it against something and it's way easier. That's why you see me do that. I think I'm going to definitely take this dart down eventually, like lower it. Oh, shoot. That's the problem with the screw punch. It can kind of travel. Because this is rotating as you push down. Sometimes it'll go like this. It'll roll across the paper like it just did. And this hole is gigantic for pattern markings. I just have it because we had ruined the tip. It used to have, just with overuse, you know. And so I bought a replacement tip. Yeah, I will go crazy without you guys, so. Plus my zip double pattern is actually ready to release right now. And the fact that I don't even have time to just say, hey everyone, it's here, is kind of crazy. I just need to spend a little time and get that. So by the end of next week, I'll probably release that pattern. And I want to get the other one to the graphic artist. So, all right, so I'm going to cut this out of fabric. Oh, don't put that there. I'm clearing the decks. Practically gone through a half a bolt. Yeah, she's pretty excited. Her new room is really nice. It's big. So I think she's pretty into that. It's outside of town, which I thought would really bug her. But she's really into it. Are you, Patty? Nice. I'm glad. Yeah, plus I really want, upon release, to release a mod for it for a zippered pocket. And so I want to make sure I can devote some time to that. Here's some other fabric. We got fabric everywhere. Gone are the days where my bodice, my front and my back fit across the width of the paper. Or the fabric. Not anymore. I mean, it's like a 3-yard, bodice. Not 3 yards, but I only need one sleeve. So maybe what I'll do is this. I could get that. Oh, I only want one sleeve though. All right. Yeah, I think Cricket had other plans before this pandemic, so she's being a good sport, rolling with the punches. Her car died this week, which was something we did not count on. Whoever does, right? So that's been kind of a blow as well for her. Ooh, I have a staple sitting there. I could have like rotary knifed that thing. Yeah, plus she's kind of a nature girl. She likes to like go to sunset every night, and she likes to paint in her, like watching sunset. And I think she's already trying to be like, ooh, I could do this here on the property, set up little spots for herself, like a hammock. She really loves hammocking. I'm going to take my own advice, and I'm not going to use my rotary knife around my own block. I'm going to mark it. Dang. I already got that on my block. Dang. I am out of practice. This right here, when this happens like this to your pattern, that is like, how do I put it? I mean, like, you know, when you look at someone's work and you're like, what a novice. That's what you would see in the garment industry. So if someone's pattern, when you're tracing it, if that happens, sometimes it means you didn't cut it out very nicely. This is because I caught it on the notch and I'm just out of practice. But, you know, that right there, too, I was just out of practice. But, you know, like if I had gone along here and it jumped, that would have been, meant probably I didn't cut it out very nicely. So, oh yeah, hammocking is absolutely a verb here. It's a thing. Oh, it's dead. She was way out too. She had gone up to this lake to check out this hike. And then she was taking a different way home because it was only like 10 minutes longer and she wanted to see what it was like. She likes going on drives and kind of checking out the area. She's always connecting all these areas, you know, in her head, you know, and all these rural roads and things. There was no service out there. So luckily, it started skipping when she got into town, right when she got into town, and she pulled over at a Home Depot and called us. And we happened to be on the other side of the freeway from her getting a U-Haul trailer for our move. And so we were able to pick her up and get her car towed. But yeah, so the engine was misfiring, and it's just like too many things. It's like $9,000. Hello, Helen. You're up late. Thanks for joining. How are you? So they're looking at cars now. Oh boy. I'm going to blame the cameras for how bad I'm tracing this. It's not me. It's being under the camera and I can't be on top of it. So I have to remember that I did make a few adjustments to this bodice. So when I do go to check the sleeve, I check those things too. I got that. All right. My blade is obviously, maybe I did hit that staple. I know. Wow, Megan, that's awesome. Okay. This will probably stay, but I'll just... Okay, when my notches are on the inside, I like to go through and just notch them. This isn't a good garment, right? So I can do that. Ugh. Where's my other blade? I have a new one. It's just at the other table. Yeah, I got to finally touch the countertops at the house. I've never had soapstone countertops, and that's what they are. And I couldn't picture what they felt like. I realized I've seen soapstone countertops before. Once I touched them, I was like, oh, okay. Oh, shoot. Got a little bit in right there. I got all these, right. Yep. And Sharpie works a charm for dart. Here. Okay. All right. Yeah, my daughter got a cute picture of us standing by the little pond. We're both wearing masks. Very telling, right? I can't believe it. This was my primary rotary knife. This little 45 or 28 millimeter. It feels so tiny to me now. Hen's teeth. Are they hard to find? Or are they just dull? Don't need to notch those. I can see them and it's only one layer. Oh, okay, Ellen. That is not too late. Yeah, you guys have been getting kind of your own little heat wave over there. I heard it was like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. There's the fold of the fabric. I was like, why is that inaccurate right there? Yeah, we had one this week too. And then last night, a thunderstorm came in and it woke me up and I was hearing the thunder, and the thunder would go on for like 7, 8, 9 seconds. It was so long. I haven't heard thunder that long in so long. Yeah, like chicken lips, exactly. I say like rocking horse poop. That's funny. Okay, so I have this ready to sew. I'm going to sew it up. But I'll have to try it on to see how I fit. I can try it on here, but I don't have a sleeve form, so it doesn't really matter on the dress form. So I'll sew this up with you guys, but then I'll fit it later. But I am going to sew a project bag. You're welcome to stay for that if you want. I just need to switch my cameras. So give me a second. Where's that? What's it called again? Camera change. I need to just move this over here. Okay, there we go. All right, let's switch everything. Oh, wow. You know, Cecile, I think that we had that storm like a week and a half ago or a week ago. Because it was big. And I remember looking at the map. Where's my water? Okay, let me get this camera. No, don't do that. There we go. Oh, see, when the camera cords touch the screen, it's not good. Camera cords are actually warm. All right, let me I'm gonna take my iron camera out and put it back in because I always have to do that. Hopefully that worked. Oh, I need the mouse. Almost there. All right. Why is that up there? Okay, just looking for the man machine. Oh wow, Eliza. I think. Oh, there we go. Wait, is that right? Oh, the lighting on the machine camera is actually not too bad. Sharpness. Oh, okay, cool. Did I use my cameras yesterday? Why are they still set up? That's weird. Let's see what the iron looks like. Oh, we even have the iron camera. Is it actually on? Nope, it's not on. Wait. Nope, it's not on. Let me see. There we go. I'm almost ready, so let me just set all these up so we don't have to stop. I didn't know we'd be doing this. Okay. Yeah, we got so much rain like a little over a week ago, Cecile. And I remember seeing that storm kind of move up the coast because I'm in California. All right, so I'm just going to do this little, you know, trial here. Do my darts first. It's nice to see it in a different fabric, right? Yeah, and today it's nice. It looks like it's trying to get sunny out there. So like you can see, so remember I told you my dart is on an angle, but still, even if I fold it at the point here at the top and line up those legs, I still don't get torquing, and this dot is right on top of the other one. So that's really what I'm going for. And when I do a prototype, I do quick and dirty. This is why there's little excuse to do a muslin, because you just need to do the bare minimum. You just need to do, if there's darts, I know that adds a little bit to it, but you can't really skip them. Can't really do half a garment either. Wait, oh, there it is. Okay. But you don't need to finish seams. You don't need to do facings or collars. You don't even need to cut those out. I keep looking for you guys right here. I keep looking there, and you're over there. And it can be, you know, a bed sheet or muslin, which you can get for, you know, $1 a yard if you do like in the States we have a Joann Fabrics, and they have muslin for, I don't know, it's a couple bucks a yard, and I think it's like 36 inches wide. I'm moving my chat over here so I can see you guys. And that, you know, and then you get it on the with the like the 40% off coupon, you can get it down to like $1 a yard. And I used to just buy a bolt of it, and the bolt would cost me, I don't know, something like $15 for the whole bolt, you know, 30 or 15 yards of fabric. So I feel like that's pretty affordable if you're really invested in preserving your fabric and making sure you're getting a really good garment. Let's sew my underarm seam together. Yeah, stop that. Put in my basting stitch between the notches. Some more back together. That was kind of sloppy. I've got my new glasses, but I'm so scared to adjust them myself, and they really need it. It's such a bummer because they keep slipping down, you know. I'm sure you've noticed me always constantly, you know, adjusting them. But I'm so worried that I'll heat them up and then I'll snap them in half or something, and then I'd be out, you know, brand new pair of glasses that I've been waiting for forever for. They didn't take forever to get. It just took me forever to order them. All right, so I'm going to do my shoulder seams. Side seam. And I'm not even ironing these darts before I do the side seam, which is a little, you know, cheap to do that. Because you can kind of, if you don't get this dart, you know, sewn flush with the side seam, it can actually pull in a really weird way. And if you iron it, it kind of helps get that. So it's like just getting this like folded down and flush. It's a little tricky. I should iron it first. That's the one area you might not want to skip over. Alright, shoulder and a side seam, and then I'll set my sleeve in, and then I'll sew my project bag. A plastic-free project bag too. No vinyl. So let's see, I should have the right hand sleeve. Yeah, I feel that that's pretty close fitting. See that? Pretty close fitting. I can already tell. Ugh. Front. So if you're trying to figure it out, like figure out your sleeve works, I think it's okay if you just do one. If you're really concerned about the fit and you really want to make sure, then do both sleeves. But I think you can get away with just doing one for most garments. But if it doesn't fit well, if it's really badly, it could be distort the fit of the whole bodice because of the sleeve pulling. Then you might want to sew two. All right, so I'm going to draw up my basting stitch here. You basically want it all along the top here. I pulled on the right side, right? Yeah, okay. Right side. I pulled on the right side. I gotta remember that. All right, so there's no ease between the side seam and the, oh, why is my notch is off? Weird. We saw me measure and mark that 3 times, didn't we? So let's see, let's get our shoulder seam lined up here. Let's see how it looks. So I could probably pull a little bit more. Alright, that's the right amount, so I need to get all that in there. And I just want it to be tight enough to where it fits, but no gathers on that stitch line. I mean, it looks like I'm going to get gathers, right? But it should be fine. I can always take out the ease if I want, if it's just too hard to set. But my experience is that the more ease, the better. It's better for me to just get good at sewing it and get that ease in there because I'll be happier with the garment. And, you know, this is quilting cotton. So it's not the most forgiving fashion fabric anyway. So it's something to keep into consideration when you go to fit it. It won't feel very good anyway. It's just like muslin won't. Muslin is a very unforgiving fabric. It's not flattering, and yeah, it's just, but it's okay for fitting. If you are fabric rich and you can actually do your muslin in the actual fabric, great. I just stitched just to the left of that basting stitch. I think I may have gotten a couple almost tucks on that side, but I'm kind of going fast anyway, so I can probably press them out. Alright, so there's my set-in sleeve. You can see, look at how much curve there I have. No tucks though. Maybe right here. But everywhere else looks pretty darn good. Especially like once you press your seam allowance towards the sleeve, which you always do. It's kind of rare that you don't. Like a flat-felled seam on an armhole, you would press it towards the body. But for other sleeve seams, you always press it towards the sleeve cap, and that way it fills in this little amount right here. But once I press that and steam it, I mean, that's almost like a suit coat how much ease I have in there. Can you see that? Like, let's see if I can give you a good view of it. See it going like this? It's a lot of ease. That's good. You can see there's no tucks. Just needs to be ironed, pressed, coerced. Alright, so now I have my basic bodice. Just needs to be ironed and tried on. Oh, that's not what I want to do. What the heck? There we go. Okay, I'm going to sew. So basically, I'm gonna start putting some kits together of the project bag, that pattern I came out with this spring. And these are all project bags that have been cut out since I closed Chicken Boots. So, oh, do I have binding? Yeah, I have binding. So I want to sew a few of them just to make sure and reassure people that yes, it is the same. The funny thing is, if you lay the pattern pieces on these, they're not the same exactly. So you'd have to, you can use the same exact directions to sew it together, but the pattern pieces are a little different. Oh my gosh. I hate it when webbing slithers off the table. It's so like, I like to loop it on my cart handle here. So I'm making this one for Miriam. She made me that really amazing eyeglass case. And I use it every day. It's a leather case and I can put it in my basket. In this foxglove, I gave her first crack. So this will be one of the kits. It'll come with everything except the bias binding. It'll have stiffener, vinyl, the exact stuff I used. There's my bottom. Just looking, I'm doing my inventory here. What is this? Oh, that's, I'm making her a non-vinyl divider. So here's my ends. Here's my bottom. document pocket, front back divider. Yeah, I'm gonna be selling kits. I'm just trying to finally address all the things I have in boxes that I just, I just haven't been able to, I just couldn't deal with right after I closed. I was moving, so I was closing the business and then I moved immediately. So I kind of had to like, okay, we're wrapping up this business closure, and I just boxed up the cut pieces I had. And I only have cut pieces for mostly the project bag and the pocket bucket. And then I have a small amount for a few products. But mostly it's project bags and pocket buckets. And the stiffener and all the vinyl is all cut out because we cut it out for production and then we ended up not doing it. So, this is, there's so much fuzz on this. I'm going to do it from this side. So, I just was like, do I get rid of this? Do I just like give it away as scrap? And something just told me, I'm like, just box it up. You have plenty of room at your new place. You can think about this. And I just boxed it up, clearly labeled it all really well. I at least spent the time to do that. And then recently I was looking for something and I went, oh yeah, I have all those project bags and I've already released the pattern. Maybe people would like kits. So I wanted to see what fabrics I had, and I probably have like 14 or 16 different fabrics. I have a lot of fabrics to choose from. But I want to make sure that, they all sew together really well. I have photographs of each one and everything. Like the actual photographs we use to sell them so you can see. The thing is I don't have the binding anymore. Mask making and just overall time. Like some of these we didn't continue to keep making, and that's why we have some of them, because we ran out of binding. And then some binding was lost in the fire because it was at the sewist's house. So I don't have it. So the people are going to have to pick their own binding. And I know some people will be bummed by that. But this binding here was the one I used on Foxy a long time ago. I can't even remember. I cannot for the life of me remember what binding I used on this print here. Like I keep thinking it's this one, but I know I used that one on Sloth. Sometimes I use the same binding on another fabric, so maybe I did. I just can't remember. It's so funny. I've looked through. I have like 80 rolls of binding, and none of them I'm like, I don't know what I did. Cool, it's a little easier to do on vinyl. Oh, I ran out of bobbin. Of course. I also don't have little scissors here, and I haven't had little scissors here for a while. I even made a video without them. I'm like, where's my little scissors? I don't have very many of this foxglove one. I sure loved this fabric. So cute. I haven't decided if I'm going to make the pocket bucket one of the patterns. I kind of want to because I have the kits. I don't want the fabric to go to waste, I'm hoping I have enough vinyl pieces cut for all the project bags I have cut. I don't think so, but it's close. I don't actually think I'll sell them all. I have enough stiffener though. That's the divider. It's usually in vinyl. These will do. I always prep everything. Here's the document pocket. guys doing? Are you guys sewing? I feel like we're just hanging out together today. I have to be honest, all I'm thinking about are these chocolate biscuits I have. They're the digestives. Helen knows what I'm talking about. I love those things. They have the worst name ever, but it's like the best cookie on the planet. Alright, so my document pocket. I need elastic for my little end pocket. This pocket's a little wonky. Look at that. Can you tell? Sometimes that big cutting machine is a little hard to cut the subtle edges off. Subtle edges out, you know. Oh, you're having a slow work day? God, I love those things, Nancy. They're perfect. I have no complaints for them, except for, you know, if they could be 0 calorie. You know what? I probably should have switched to blue thread. Dang it. Why didn't I think of that? Plus my machine got kind of hung up on the elastic, so the stitch is really tiny. We're going to do right by Miriam and switch our thread color. We would rarely switch thread colors in production. This one we would have. We probably had a navy blue binding. Yeah, that I think mine are, well, yeah, I've had those. The McVitie's. I've had all kinds. But the ones have right now are the Lulu. They make like the schoolboy crackers. I know you know what I'm talking about. My mom loves those schoolboy crackers. Oh my, I'm about to go get another one of these. Let's see my sometimes does your machine do that? Like if I was sewing here, my presser foot was on the elastic and I was getting a little hung up, so it did the little tiny stitches. Yikes, right? But it'll be worth it. That was the sewing fairy telling me, you numbskull, you should have changed the thread color and you wouldn't be in this spot where you're in right now, this fix. Oh man, this is kind of grueling. It was already pre-serged and everything. Like sometimes some of these kits are gonna come like that with serging already on them and stuff. Yeah, I bought 2 boxes. Oh, yeah, you know what I love, Nancy, are the stoned wheat thins. I love those things. I like the cars, but those can be a little dry, you know? I know, right, Nancy? Exactly. It would have been fine if the thread matched. It's just a gathering, I mean a elasticized pocket right here. But yes, it's kind of brutal. I don't want to lose this pocket because I want to make sure all those kits are complete. I'm going to sell them for I think $10 each, which is the cost of the materials. No profit. I just want them to go to good homes so they're not sitting in boxes here, you know? I can't sew all these. I probably have 10 project bags sitting here that I've sewn lately. After today, I'll have probably 10 sitting here that I don't need. That I've just had to do for like samples or the video or rephotograph a step or test something out and, you know. Yeah, right? If I had more fabric, I do have more of this, but I'm reserving it. I don't have very much. I barely could get her divider out, and it kind of pained me because I'm like, well, this is the last of this fabric. Oh, you love them. Yeah, I love them with cheese too. And olives, yeah. But those stoned wheat thins, who are those by? I love those. And lately, like when I was really sick last week, they started sounding good, and I wasn't eating much. Like I kind of was eating, but I kind of wasn't eating, you know. And I wanted those, and Cricket's like, I'll get them for you. So she went and got me 2 boxes. And I remember I'll never forget this little memory now, because one night, so I was sleeping all day. I felt terrible. I'm pretty sure I had coronavirus. I got tested for it, and I'm pretty certain I had a false negative. I had all the symptoms except for like 2. So I was sleeping all day, and then I would wake up in the evening, like late evening, like 7-ish, and I would feel good. I would feel not normal, but almost, felt like it just felt so good to not feel as bad as I'd been feeling, and I'd be wide awake. And so I would just be like wide awake. And one night, me and Cricket bumped into each other in the kitchen at midnight, and I made myself peanut butter and jelly crackers on those stoned wheat thins, and it was like the best tasting thing that I had had all week. And she was making some for her, and she's like, do you want one? And I was like, yeah, I'll have one. She goes, you want another one? I'm like, no, I just want one. And she's like, here, I'm gonna make you 2. And I was sitting there eating them as she's handing them to me, and she's like, are you sure you don't want another one? I'm gonna make another one. I'm just like, I just sat there eating them. She goes, see, you want, and I ate 3 of those things. They're like this big. It was like 2, so I ate 6 crackers plus peanut butter and jelly for them. Yeah. Yes, you like wheat thins. Yeah, they're called stoned wheat with the D at the end. Oh, I almost did that again. Okay, wait. I'm gonna do a couple more things before I finish that. I'm going to do these seams here. And then, could I switch? Where do I need binding next? I could switch to blue right now. Let me think. Yeah, I can switch to blue right now. The box is like a pale blue box. And I think it has like a picture of wheat on it. And then the company, it's like a dark red background. If you Google stoned wheat thins or wheat crackers, stoned wheat crackers, you'd probably find them. Maybe they're not thins. I don't know. Please tell me I have blue. I do. Here we go. They're just good. They kind of have a nutty taste to them. They're good. They hit the spot. They probably tasted 10 times better than they should have. I just remember that sitting there telling her no, but I was hungry. Oh, I know why. I was like, I wasn't hungry. It was that I needed to take acetaminophen, and I usually take Aleve for things like that. Why is my needle rotated so much I can't thread it? There we go. But because of the fever, I was taking the acetaminophen, and it was bugging my stomach. And I don't usually have that problem, not even with Aleve. And so I really wanted to take it so I could sleep at night. And so I was like, oh, I need to eat something. I didn't really want to eat anything. And I said, maybe I'd have peanut butter and jelly cracker. She's like, yeah, I'll make you peanut butter and jelly cracker. It was fun. Do my pocket again. Oh, let me get rid of this thread. It's so awkward when I've already started it and I'm not like continuing from where I left off. Here, I'll just pretend like I am. There we go. Get rid of some of these threads here. gotta sew nice. It's for someone else. It's not for me. Doesn't seem like I'm getting the gathering that I want though. Yeah, after all that. Actually, just take out this end. I'm gonna pull that elastic a little more. I don't know who designed this darn pattern. Maybe they should provide a measurement for the elastic, you know? Okay. There we go. Do all my tops. Oh, I didn't do my bottom. Usually I do my bottom right off the bat. Just tack it together as one big sandwich. Like that. Those need to be ironed. Yeah, because I also want to make sure that the stiffener that's cut for these works for them. But like I said, if you were to lay these pieces up against the pattern, the project bag pattern, they'd be slightly different. And that just comes from like kind of truing it up, and then when I went to digitize it in, I kind of, you know, made some of the measurements a little bit more rounded so that it would be easy to communicate with people if I needed to. Sometimes people get hung up on measurements. And that ended up not being the case. The pattern, the graphic artist doesn't even want to touch the pattern. She's just like, I will label them and that's it. Whoa. I'm going to iron these. Let's see, I need these. I'll leave those. Let's see, iron's over here. Bend. Guess it won't bend. Oops, going the wrong way. I just laid all that out the wrong direction. I'm out of practice. This is probably the only ironing we did at Chicken Boots. Pretty sure it was this pattern only. Think about that. Let's see. Unless there was a wrinkle of the fabric. We never ironed anything. Me and machine. There it is. Ah, yeah. No worries, Nancy. It's really nice to see you. Yeah. Hang in there. Okay, hang in there. Okay. Ooh, I saw the power flicker. Doesn't seem like we're gonna lose power, but that was weird. If you lose me, I'll see you when I see you. Where's my all? You guys saw me bring it over here, right? Okay, we have our ends. Quiet sewing today, sorry. I figure a lot of you probably don't even have this pattern and you don't really need me to sit here and explain to you how to sew it. So, but if you do have it and you want any tips or questions, just let me know. I feel like I've talked about this pattern so much with you guys. You're like, yeah. So oh, shoot. Gotta pay attention. Yeah, I'm getting a little off here. Getting a little off. There we go. Let's do it from the other side then. It looks like it's a little wonky. There we go. Yeah, it's a little tighter. Let's go up higher. And we'll true it. You know? Ah, you got handles? Like webbing? Or are you doing something fancy? Have you gotten your stuff yet, Patty? Probably not, huh? When did I send that? I feel like I sent that on Tuesday. And then you're gonna have zipper for days. Yeah, so this stiffener might be a little bit bigger. divider. It's so funny not to see the vinyl. She kind of feels the same way I do about plastic. It's so weird doing it not in vinyl. I don't think maybe I've done this once. It's really weird. Oh, I forgot the webbing straps. Oh man, that's hilarious. It's okay though. I just need to take off this right here. That's hilarious. I've only still sewn a few hundred of these, you know. And I need to change my thread to black. Oh, that's the scissors I'm missing. My new little green ones. How weird. Those new little green ones. That's my scissors. That's so weird. I wonder where those are. I'll bet. Maybe I was hand sewing something and I put them over by my computer. Huh. Interesting. I think this is a size 14 needle, not a 16. Something I need to think about before I get to the last steps. Whoops. It's in Utah, you tracked it? Okay. Oh. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you really can't get much done without it. I have a webbing source if you need. I just ordered 300 yards of webbing and I got it in like 2 days. In fact, I need to, I bought a roll for a friend. Okay, so that's one strap. Here's my other strap. It was the only thing I needed for the kits was the webbing. And it's easy enough for me to get, so I was like, all right, I'll buy that. That's the only thing I had to buy for the kits. And I feel like it'll help people get going, you know, and not have to worry about finding everything. Like you're finding, it's kind of hard. He was like, are you calling because you need elastic for mask making? He's like, is that, I'm out till July on that. I was like, no, I don't need that. And I got a new, or a revised binding source, which is great. Not that I'm looking to make any of that right now. I just like having it. It makes me feel good. All right, so now I am ready to continue. I need the blue still. Oh, but do I? I could do threads right here. All right, so this side's done. I just need to tack this, but this side needs that. I just need to, you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah. All right, we're gonna change to blue, right? Or cream right now. Yeah, if you just email me, Patty, to remind me. I'll just tell you, it's John Howard. John Howard is the place I go to for most of my findings. And they also supply military contractors, so you can get a lot of them American made. So the webbing I get is a military webbing so that it's made in America. Because that's one of the stipulations for having a contract. I always paid the extra to have American made findings. Alright, so this side's ready. It looks so funny to me. Okay, we're gonna do this. Someone's got a race car. Alright, I always like to place this. Make sure, yeah, my strap's not directly across from it. Sorry, Miriam. At least can keep these lined up right here. I think that's pretty important. And I switched to the cream now because at least now I can just put that on this orange. I have the blue bobbin. I better still have a blue bobbin. So it doesn't show. But I'm putting the document pocket over one side anyway, so that'll be fine. Put it over this one. And now I can change back to cream. Yeah, John Howard, and I feel like they're based in California, but maybe they just have an office here. Where's the little straw? I want the straw. Alright, we are to the binding step. My favorite part. Yeah, exactly, Patty. Yeah, it's not as hard as people think to find it. And it's really barely costs any more for some of those findings. Even if it costs 4 times more, findings are so affordable. They're just really marked up in the fabric stores. So it's hard to tell. But like, you know, like you saw with the zipper is, I mean, what is that? Like 7 cents. Was it 35 cents a yard or something like that? I can't remember what it is, but it's something like that, you know? I might be thinking of the webbing. I've been pricing a lot of different things lately. Alright, so I have my document pocket on here. Let's get rid of that thread though. Got our bags connected. I love this fabric print, but it is one of those fabrics where the surface grabs everything. You know what I mean? Like some fabrics that are like smooth, things don't cling to it as bad, but this is this organic cotton. Oh, I want to say it's from Cloud 9 or something. I love it. I've bought a lot of their fabrics, but for some reason this foxglove one, it grabs everything. All right, so I'm gonna put the bottom on next. Here is my binding. Let me just look at this and make sure I can't trim any of this off, because look at that right there. That I may need to trim. Lost a little on that side. Let's try and get a little bit back. Wish I had my awl. I see it. I can get my awl. I know, isn't it great, Cecile? I got it. And I'm walking right by the chocolate digestives. This is the fabric I used for that stop motion that's at the top of the Facebook page. Because all the foxes are facing the same direction, except for, I mean, this one right here. So I cut them all out really precisely, and I don't know why, but it just was lucky that it looks literally like I animated the foxes, because I did the stop motion, and you know, like it jumps, you know, and then it sits down, and then it looks over its shoulder. I mean, it looks totally like it's like that stop motion is so great. It turned out so good, and it's because their fabric, the way they designed the fabric, is so perfect. Okay, just making sure I got the threads on that. Let's get rid of this. I'm not an expert stop motion creator, but I do love playing with it. It's so fun, you know. Yeah. Be strong, exactly. You know I'm gonna gobble them up, because I'm gonna be like, well, they can't sit here while I'm gone all weekend. They'll just go stale, because I already opened the package and had 2 this morning. And why the heck is 2 a serving size? Why isn't like 8? Why isn't 8 a serving size? That's my big question, you know? Oh, see this one too. Let's kind of bring this over here. Get rid of that. Against all the edges that are the shortest ones. I thought this was one project bag I had, the foxglove. I think I have 4 project bags. And the ones I have this amazing butterfly print that sold so well. I bought the fabric 3 times. And it was the bane of Rayanne's existence. Like, she was so over that fabric and sewing that fabric, but everything about it was so good. She really didn't like the lining print. I think she didn't like that mustard color that we used. And then I have one in this squirrel print that is, I think Joel Dewberry. Wait. Oh, I think it's Tula Pink. A Squirrel by Tula Pink. That's one of mine. I have the Sloths by Sarah Watts, because I wasn't passing that up. All my bags are seconds, though, by the way. I never got a first. I have another one. I don't have hardly any Harry Potter stuff. So all those customers that bullied me and told me that, you know, I sucked because I didn't make enough. Yeah, I didn't get any of it either. I have one other project bag. Oh, I have knit print. Yeah, you gotta believe that. I got knit print. I have an original knit print with the original binding. So those are my 4, I think. I feel like I have one more, but I can't think of what it is. I don't think we made any Harry Potter in a project bag anyway, so still there. Alright, we just have the ends and we're all done. So let's double check. Always double check right here and right here, because there is no going back after this. Alright, and I'm going to check my edge here. Prep it. Get rid of this. And you. I've never made one of these with the orange binding. I know we didn't use orange. I just can't think of what we used. Maybe it was an orange. God, I can't think. It's so funny. I'll have to look at the picture. I feel like we used the binding we used on the sloth bag. It was navy blue and it had like coral and gold dots. No. Huh. Alright, that worked perfect right there. So that's good. Even though that stiffener is a little big, the pieces are the right size. So that's good. The fabric pieces. That's what I wanted to make sure of. Oh yeah, that fit perfect. Yeah, that's what you like to see. Oh, sure, Patty. Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. I'll go through my next one step by step. I think confidence is really key with this. Good needle and knowing where your needle is in relation to the seam and on the bag. And I know that seems like, well, of course I know where it's at. It's like I see it there. That's not kind of what I mean. What I mean is like thinking about the bag as a seam line. And so that little, like if you were to draw the imaginary line and you know, if you want to get good at something like this kind of sewing, when there's 3 layers of fabric, especially when one of them is a stiffener, it really adds to the seam length in some cases, right? So it starts to get inaccurate. It's why, like, it's why if you were to lay the lining, well, you can't really on this one because of the way I did the clean finish on the outside, but the lining is going to be smaller than the outer because of the stiffener. The stiffener adds a thickness, right? Because of the thickness of it. So if you want to get really good at sewing things like this that have the thickness with it, what I recommend is using a fabric that's like a tightly woven poplin, something that stays really accurate when you cut it and you sew it. And then draw your seam allowances on there. And then you can see exactly where things are stacking up and lining up on top of one another. And so when you get to somewhere like this, down here at this corner, right, you have to pivot. I know this all seems like really obvious stuff, but it's not until you're trying to troubleshoot why one side pokes up above the bag or the bag pokes up above the side when you get there, where things are and where you can adjust them. And that took me a really long time to get really good at remembering and get it intuitive. Like it took me a long time. I have a really good spatial sense, and that is one thing. Every time I do it, I'd be like, if it's short this way, do I pull it that way or this way? And then I do it wrong and I'd be like, oh, no, it's the other way, you know? So, getting comfortable with where you pivot and knowing like that little pivot point is actually, the juncture of the seam. So when the bag is open right here, right, you're pivoting in this seam right here, at a 1/4 inch right there, right? And so if you look at this bag as one long straight line, it's not, it doesn't seem like it is because there's seams here, but it is. Like if this bag didn't have the divider, it would be a one long straight line that you're trying to make into a 3-dimensional shape because of the sides constraining it. So that is one thing that I feel like that it's a really good idea to get comfortable with knowing where your seam allowance is. Looking at it on this side, it's even more telling, right? Because you can see the white thread on the seam line. And then I trim it down to the 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's the width of the finished binding. So if you're doing a binding that's wider or narrower, I don't recommend narrower on something like this. I always think that the seam allowance inside the binding needs to be the same as the finished width of the binding. So, you know, it fills it all the way up. And so when you feel in there, there's no ridges. So say this was 1 inch wide binding, right? And, you know, it's like down here. I would probably use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the bias and attach it, and so then you'd feel your seam allowance in there. But if it were like a 1/2 inch wide binding, I would make the seam allowance a 1/2 inch, and so the whole thing felt, you could feel it in there. And I think that's another thing is when you sew this on here, try and not have to trim any of your bias. If you have to trim your bag to get there to that 1/4 inch, go for it. But making sure that you don't lose any of your width, you know, is good. So let's sew the next one on. I like to sew them both on before I do the last step. It's kind of like the, I know I say this a lot, it's like my dessert. And you'll notice on this side, it looked like it was perfect when I sewed it on, but then at the very end, it got a little bit off. I feel like that's acceptable. Because when the bag is sitting here like this, it's just not a very noticeable difference. If it's like a fat 1/4 inch or more, whereas, you know, one is poking up above the other, you know, like that, then yeah, you need to address that, and I'll show you how to address that. And that would have been a second for us if it got that far and we didn't fix it. But I sewed the bags and I would have just fixed it on the fly. There were a couple times I was like, yeah, screw this bag. And I'd finish it and take it home or give it to a friend or sell it as a second at one of our sales. So mostly my seconds on the project bag was when I went to trim around the perimeter here, I would accidentally trim the binding. So when my scissors are like this, I would accidentally catch the binding. So I think all the seconds at my house are 2 of them are like that. One of them I think is uneven at the top. And I think one of them, the fabric is pulling away on the inside. It didn't get caught in the seam. Those are the common areas for me. We all have our little things that we could do better. Those are mine. So yeah, so when I start these, you know, I line it up at the top here. And to also remember, anytime you're doing this kind of stuff, you can really smash the bag. I just can't stress that enough. Make sure this whole area right here is nice and controllable, and it's not telling you who the boss is. You're the boss of this thing, and you have to let it know that. So one of the reasons I don't pre-sew this, and I saw a couple testers mention that, why don't I just pre-sew this? And I mentioned this, I think, in the video. The reason I don't is, say I pre-sewed this with the white thread, even if it was thread that was matching, invariably on one of the layers, the thread isn't matching. So if I did navy blue, the navy blue would show up on the orange, right? If I pre-sewed it, and then I went to do the binding, right? So I went to do the binding. What if my pre-sew is sticking out right here? Well, that's fine if you're sewing 1 bag, 2 bag, 5 bags. But if you're in production, you aren't going to go back and pick that out. That's too finicky. We had barely any margin on this bag at all. I made and sold this bag mostly as a courtesy because it was a good design. It wasn't something I made a lot of money at. So I wasn't going to add to my production for something like that. So I don't pre-sew for that reason. I also find that I was more on top of my game if I committed to sewing it correctly the first time through. And it made me a little bit more responsible about how I got it together. So, all right, so when I start this, I smash the bag all the way out of the way. Even with the vinyl, I smash. Anytime you bought one of these bags from us, it got smashed like this. So I line up these edges here. I wrap the binding around the top. This is just a nice clean way. If this is too fiddly, just start like this. Just leave a little tail off like that. The first few dozen times I had to leave my tail off. And then don't let it shift. And pull this kind of tight. It'll kind of help keep it in place. Okay, and then get your back tack on there. And now you're like, all right, now I got the machine helping me here, right? And also, if you're using a machine where you can adjust the pressure of your presser foot, crank it down a little bit because you're really going to be hoiking on this and yanking on it. And you should always stop with your needle down I would use a size 16 needle. I actually think I have a 14 in here because what was the last thing we sewed together? Pretty sure it was the dress. So it's probably a 14, and I probably should switch to a 16. I on my old machine used 18s on this, but I only did project bags and pocket buckets, and the pocket buckets are even stouter because they had 2 layers of vinyl in addition to all of what you do on this. So that, oh, and sometimes, yeah, 2 layers of vinyl, and that vinyl can add kind of a bit. So, all right, so I keep these lined up. And so you saw that I trimmed a lot of this because you have to. I mean, if you don't, you're trimming it after you've sewn the binding. You need to go by the shortest edge, right? Like that can be inside there because this all will fit in the seam allowance. So get there. And then when I get down here, I straighten this out by pushing it down and straight, trying to get this line right here straight. And that's just so that when this end hangs off, it's not going to be encumbered or want to push away or do something else. So I kind of put my hand in here, push the bag open and flat like this and really stretch it out. And then I push the binding that's underneath here toward the bottom of the bag toward me. And it's going to go the other way when I get to the other one. So yeah, I keep going here. Don't worry about all this. This is a hot mess. And it feels a little stressful, but you're going to get a workout and you're going to be sore after doing this usually. You just need to manage just this right here. Just try to tune all that out. And then you're going to pivot, remember, right here in this seam. Right there in that seam, 1/4 inch away from this edge here. And that should be, hopefully, 1/4 inch above this edge here. If it's not, and this is like, you are a little further away from this edge, you can do one more stitch. It's okay if you're kind of on the body, not quite in that seam. That's okay. So stop, needle down, and now you're going to pull this over to line up with this edge right here. Just pull it over like this. And I push down, I go like this. Kind of scoop it and push it down like this. I hold it down, and then I pull this and push that out of the way. I want this flat. I'm just managing this right here. And I put my finger in here, I pick up the binding, and I tilt it. I just pivot it. Now, there's a few schools of thought with that because it's not a rounded corner. We can pivot there, but technically we are kind of rounding it because, you know, it's fabric. So this is fine to do that. We can pivot right there. So now you keep sewing. Remember, always stop, needle down, do all this stuff, needle down. And if your machine is having a little bit of a whiny day with you with that, just walk it with your hand wheel, just one stitch, and always walk your hand wheel toward you with any machine, unless there's a machine out there that doesn't do it that way, but almost all machines, you walk your hand wheel toward you. All right, so now we're getting down here, and see, look, you can't even see my underside of my bag there, and look, it's a frickin' hot mess under there, right? So I'm gonna reach inside here. I'm going to open up the bag. Remember, my needle is down and the pressure of my presser foot is pretty strong. I'm going to push this binding edge that way toward the bottom of the bag. And this is kind of something you got to like make it do. All right, so now I've got the binding edge flat toward that way. And now I'm going to make sure all this is calmed down a little bit. So remember, I still need to get to the corner. So I'm kind of pushing like this. My wrist ended up getting a lot of strain from doing some of this. I'm still lined up. I'm getting to that corner, same thing. I'm going to sink the needle down into that seam. Pivot. All right, so now we're going to talk about when, hi Louise. Ooh, you're up late too. Yeah, we did a sleeve block and I'm just sewing a project bag. And I'm just giving one little tutorial on sewing the end here. So let's talk about when your bag doesn't line up. So this is your home stretch. You're like, all right, I got the home stretch. I've got both corners. I'm ready to go. This bag is in the bag. And then you get to the top and you're like, it's a 1/2 inch off. So that's going to happen sometimes if you're inaccurate with cutting or sewing, whatever. I mean, who knows, right? It just happens no matter how accurate you think you are sometimes. So let me just walk you through how to fix that. So all right, I'm going to rotate my side the same way as I have. I'm just going to mash this down so you can see. So if your bag, if the side, the end of the bag is too tall, like it's going to go past the top of the bag, that means that you need to shave off a little bit of the end at this end. And so what you can do is, like, this is what I do. I go like this. Right now I check, like, where am I at? All right, I'm about 1/8 of an inch above right there. That's within my tolerance. That's totally fine. Say it's a lot more than that. What I would do right then is I would take out this stitching to about right here. Leave this corner alone. You nailed that. You're fine there, right? This is always the easy corner. And you don't really want to get into this corner or have to re-sew it because your machine was already a little whiny with you, whatever, right? Get to about right here. And then pull out the threads and pull out your stitching and then hang this off of the bag the amount you're off. So if it's off 1/4 of an inch, hang this piece off there 1/4 of an inch. Trim it off if you have to, so visually you're fine. So just taper it kind of like a wedge. Take that off. And now you have a new seam line. You have a new pivot point on where you're going to be pivoting your needle. Now, if it's the opposite, say your bag, your top stops like right here, right? You're like, I'm done. I quit. So what you're going to do then, that's quite a bit. You're going to kind of probably have a wonky bag, especially if it happens on the other end as well. Well, then you're going to have a bag that is opposite corners wonky. Because remember, this ending corner is kitty corner to the other end. It's not going to be on the same side of the bag. It's going to be on opposite corners. So if this happens right here, what you need to do is pull this out again to about right there. And then you're going to sew this piece higher up on the bag. You need to change the pivot point and get it so that maybe you're lining that edge up much higher on this end. So I'll just take it out, show you. I'm going to take out a few stitches here. Might as well. All right, so say your bag, this end right here was sticking above the end, right? You get to the end and it's like that. So then you're going to take this out to about where I have it there, and you're going to hang this end off the amount, right? So if it's 1/4 of an inch there, you're going to hang this off 1/4 of an inch off the end there like that, right? And now your pivot point is 1/4 of an inch still here. You're still focused on the seam line on this piece of the bag, right? You can trim that off if you want, if you need that kind of visual confirmation. But really, you're just going to look at the 1/4 inch seam line on here and pivot there. And then now when you rotate it up, it's all going to fit up there, right? So then if it's the other way around, that this one right here is longer, so the bag is longer than the side, what you're going to do, and this one's a little trickier to fix, most often it's the other thing that I find, is you're going to pivot your end higher up on the bag. So remember, like, what you're trying to do is get this little point right here. You don't want to lose any of your side, right? It's already a little bit too short. So you're trying to get this to be a longer amount. Think of it also as inches. Ah, awesome, Louise. Think of it as inches, and if you need that kind of data to understand what's going awry, measure between here and here on each of these pieces and see which one is it. So if you need to shorten this, you're not going to take apart your bag and shorten the top right here. You're not going to shorten it right here either. What you can do is just maybe change where this pivots. So maybe you pivot up way up high here and get it above. And then basically you'd be trimming off this little bit like this. So yeah, you are altering your bag a little bit, but hopefully once you get better and better at this, you're not having these issues. You're just kind of knowing where your little foibles are. Like, I've learned where my little foibles are, and then I would combat those, and then I would create a new one, you know, and then I would fix it. So Yeah, for a while there, I all of a sudden changed how I sewed these because of some other thing. And what happened was all my linings weren't getting caught on the bottom of the bag. And I was like, what happened here? And I only had me to blame. Now I realized it was just something, when I changed my sewing style, I had started to do something just slightly different, and then it wasn't catching it in. I also I always spent the time to tack all these edges, maybe not on the ends on these sides here, but definitely on the bag. That way I knew this couldn't crumple in here. And so on this piece right here, because I didn't stitch it, you have the danger of this happening on the inside of the bag. It's very easy for that to happen, you know? Yeah, so Louise, you might try walking it with your hand wheel. If it's only going to, if it won't do it for like a quarter of an inch, leave that quarter of an inch unsewn. It'll be fine. I've seen people do that and it worked out just fine. All right, so now I line up the top of my bag. Sometimes I can actually just get it to line up because I kind of like, you know, just kind of ease it in there. But see right now, look, I don't know if you can see this, but it wants to see it's crumpling in here like that. So that is a perfect example because I didn't stitch these two layers together. It will do that. And that's a bummer. That is a very hard thing to fix once you have already finished the bag. It's very hard to be motivated to fix that. So I'm always looking for those kinds of things because those are deal breakers for me. Especially if it was on a bag that I didn't actually like really want for me, because I don't need any more bags. Sometimes I'd be like, oh, I'm okay that the sloth bag ended up being a second because I really wanted one and I didn't want to take one out of production because it was such a popular fabric. All right, so then we're going to look inside, and we always check before we do the binding, because once we have sewn, whoa. Oh, that's what I did. Okay. It's so dark. Why didn't you guys tell me it was so dark? Once I get to the binding, it's kind of my last opportunity to fix any of those little things. So one thing I found is, say I looked inside my bag in there, and that's what I discovered, that the lining on the side here wasn't caught in there, just like we saw it almost. And sometimes you can even do this. You can kind of look and see, okay, I've got two linings, great. Just take out that section where you're like, oh, look, I can see my one layer of my lining's missing. Just take out that section. Don't take out the whole side. Just take out that little section, pull your lining, and then stitch it again. It's, you know, it's a bit easier to do that. Yeah, Louise, I know. That is a bummer. It is a kind of a stout thing to sew. One person was experimenting with not using stiffener in the seam allowance. So you might try that. Maybe remove the stiffener seam allowance on the, let's see, what would I say? Maybe on the end. And just leave the stiffener 1/4 of an inch smaller around those three sides. You could try that. And then that reduces a lot of bulk. They felt like it worked pretty good when they did it. It's just a little fussier that you have to set it up that way. So you see, like right here, I kind of round the corner, but not quite. I actually don't really want to, like that was a little too close. I was a little sloppy there. I try and still leave it so that it's going to fill up the binding. So in other words, I just kind of round it like this. These scissors are just not that great anymore. Let me get rid of these threads here. I'm about to cut my hand off right in front of you guys. You can tell. So I try and leave a seam allowance around it, maybe just a little shy than the sides. It just makes it a little easier to turn the corner, but it still means it's filled up. Whereas on this side, because I kind of cut it a little closer, see, it's a little bit slack right there. We're so trained to clip the corners off of things like collars and stuff like that, that it is easy to do that, just kind of instinctually clip your corner off there. But you kind of want a little bit of something to fill up the binding. You don't want the binding to be all like you know, wrinkly right there, right? Yeah, sure, Patty. Yeah, I mean, I've sewn enough of these. I'm happy to share that information. I can remember where I was sitting when I figured some of these things out, and it was in my backyard studio back in Humboldt at my old sewing machine, you know, and I would sit there and do things like this. I would take my awl. I've had this awl for a really long time. I would stick it in and then be like, okay, where is it going? You know, or I would stick a machine needle in because I really wanted to understand what was happening. That's kind of how I got good at a couple of other sewing techniques like welt pockets too. If you're a visual person, it makes a lot of sense, you know, to kind of understand the cause and effect of it. Your binding's pretty stretchy too, so if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know, it's not gonna make it over the binding, just remember that it's pretty stretchy. Like I push this away right here, grab it, and fold it in there like this, and sometimes I'll run my awl in there as well. And I use the awl because say it's only sewing, it's only gonna make it to like right here, and there's my stitch line. I use that awl and I yank it over. It's stretchy. And when I get to these corners here, sorry, I forgot to keep instructing on this part. I push with my thumb this area here to get it away from the corner. It helps my machine go by it a little bit, but it also kind of just flattens it out and makes it less of a corner. And so then over here, I do this so automatically. I put my hand inside. I don't know why I'm getting rid of those threads. They're going to be back in a second. I put my hand inside, and what I'm doing is putting my hand over this seam right here and flattening it out. So I'm flattening it out, and I push this one here away, right? So I'm getting this all flat. My needle is down. My presser foot's up right now because my foot's on the thing, and now I just do one stitch at a time there. Now, this right here is the bottom of the bag. No one's going to see that. All right, same with this corner here. I kind of get the corner centered, and then I fold my binding over it. Got my hand in there, and I'm flattening this out. Let it know who's boss. Pull it where you want it. Because if the bag is where you want it, you're less likely to pull on it when it's under the needle, and you absolutely cannot pull something when it's with the needle. Right now I can pull it, right, because the needle is down. But if you're pulling things as you're sewing it and the needle's moving up and down, you have a really good potential to break or bend your needle. And a bent needle is almost more dangerous than a broken one, because at least the broken one, you will discard it and you'll get a new one. But if you bend your needle, especially in a sewing machine, what'll happen is your timing can get off and things will start skipping stitches, and it gets really dangerous for you, especially when you're doing these really thick things. I don't know why, but I had one machine, and every time it broke a needle, it would hit me right here on my cheekbone. I was kind of glad when I started wearing glasses, you know? So when I do these little corners here, I just fold down this little corner. It's the only thing I'm doing different. Fold this little corner down, and then I just continue to fold it as normal. This orange really shows every little mistake I make too. So, you know, I got off right there. I would let this go. Early on, I would be like, oh, I gotta do this again and again and again. I found that I had to be kinder to myself. It's handmade. It's well made. It was gonna last longer than anything else people were getting at the time. It can go through the laundry. I had to be kinder to myself. And, you know, most likely if that happened, it was usually on a bag where the fabric background was white anyway, and you wouldn't even have seen that. So you have to be a little kind. This isn't a couture bags business, you know? I believe in doing the best you can, but I also think you need to be kind to yourself when it's, you know, something you're not even making a full margin on. It was still a very, very good product. higher quality than almost anything else that I was seeing at the time. And it helped make other sewists sewing bags step up their game. Because they were just making things that weren't that great. And there still are. There's a ton of people out there making bags that are just not that great, you know? And they're selling it for a lot of money. They deserve to make a living, but you also don't have to buy it if it's not a good product, you know? So, yeah, right, Cecile? Exactly. I know. This fabric is so cute. I bought an extra bolt of the lining to make myself a dress. I never did make the dress, but I did make a lot of masks with it. I don't necessarily pivot at the corners because by then they're a little more rounded, you know. You can pivot, but and I have done that for like hundreds of things, and it looks fine on one side, and the other side it would look like I would take like it would be like a corner in the middle of something that didn't look like a corner. It was kind of weird. I watched this sewist at a factory sewing my stuff once, and I saw she was rounding the corner, and I was like, of course, why wouldn't I do that? She's like, and she was like, well, it's not really a corner anymore. Like, she was trying to defend herself. I'm like, no, it looks great. Let me see if I did it on one so you can see. Now, see, these are, they're kind of rounded, so I did pretty good following. Yeah, same with that, but there we go. Get rid of the thread. Oh, I forgot a label. Oh, well. My ego is definitely not tied to that anymore. All right. Cool. Well, I hope Miriam likes it. It's a great fabric. I like the orange is great. I always liked binding. Like, this is kind of loud in a way, but at the same time, I like it to frame something and offer contrast, you know? Yeah. Yeah, so... Well, thanks for hanging out and sewing the bag with me. I can't wait to try on my bodice block with the sleeve. So I don't know what I'll be doing next week. Maybe I'll do the thing I have for hearts, that knit dress, the Alcott. Alcott? Cashmerette? Alcott? Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I have another project bag sitting here in Market. It's another print. I love this one. Look at their little critters at the farmer's market. Isn't it cute? And then I love this print. It's like this tone-on-tone shadow print. I love this print. I'm going to do this in a... what binding did I pick? Where'd it go? I don't want to have to figure out my binding again. It wasn't that. I bet it's still sitting over there. Oh, well. I think I picked a blue. Oh, yeah. I picked a blue. Oh, well. I'll find it. It's probably on the floor somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, right, Louise, exactly. I was glad you picked the orange, too. I was like, well, these are my binding choices. I had one navy blue and then 3 that were orange. I'm like, oh, God, I'm sorry. I have so many oranges. She was like, oh, I like that orange one. I was like, oh, good. So... Cool. All right, you guys. Well, thank you. Have a great weekend. Is that a bag too? Oh yeah, that other one will be same bag. So you probably missed, Louise, that I have a bunch of these cut out from my chicken boots days, and I'm gonna make them into kits, and they'll come with the webbing, the stiffener, the fabric pieces, the vinyl, all cut out and ready to go. And then they'll just be missing binding. And so I have them, so many of them cut out, and I'd much rather them... I thought this was upside down for a second, and I was like, really? So yeah, I'm just sewing a few of them together to make sure that they sew together well, because we could deal with weird things. Like sometimes you'd have a season where all the project bags, if there's a cutting error, it happens to all of them. And maybe it happens to all of them on just one piece. Because I remember we would be like, oh, shoot, that's all our fabric. And we have like the, you just, something happens, you trace it wrong and then you go by the wrong line or whatever. And me and Rand would be like, let's just sew all the funky ones first, but it would take us a while and we'd be so excited. So I just want to make sure none of these have any of those. I don't think any of them do, which is great. And I just want to make sure the stiffener works with them because they were different seasons and cut by different people and different times. We didn't do all of the cutting ourselves sometimes. So yeah, this market, I have like 14 fabrics. So cool. Yeah, well, don't buy it until you know your machine. I don't want you to be frustrated with it. I have hundreds of them, so it'll be fine. Yeah. Some of, like this one, I probably only have like 5 or 10. I have some knit. Yeah, I can't wait to show you the fabrics I have. It'll be fun. So, no binding, but everything else is there. So, I think people can handle that part, right? This is great with the fabric divider. Looks good. I like it. Such a cute fabric. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to be packing next week, but I'll pop in here and work as well a little bit. So I don't know when you'll see me or what I'll be streaming next, but I'll let you know. Just keep an eye out, and I'll try and do that little... Do you guys get notified when I put something on the community board? Like today? Do you get like a... I don't know, like a notification for that? Or is it... You just have to stumble upon it? Yeah, you will not be beaten by your machine. Exactly. Because I know Jan saw that. I'm kind of curious because I can do it on Instagram, but sometimes, like me, I'm not always on there. So I'll try and remember to do that so you guys get the notification. I don't know. No one ever uses those for me. So, all right, guys. Thanks for coming. Nice seeing you. Sorry I was an hour late today, but I wanted to be prepared for the sleeve draft, which went really good. That was really awesome, and I'm glad I took that extra hour. So, thanks. And I will see you guys next week sometime, I'm pretty sure. But if you don't despair. I'll be back. So, all right. Bye, guys.